Chairman, I've just been notified that we are now live.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of Cornwall Council's Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. Members wishing to speak or ask a question should indicate by typing an X in the chat box. And that chat box isn't for chatting as such, it is just for the X or a point of order. As I call members to speak, I will remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the democratic officer will advise you. Votes will be taken using a roll call procedure. The democratic officer will read out the recommendation and the name of the proposer and seconder, and will then call each committee member's name in turn. You should confirm your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. The democratic officer will then count the votes and advise the result accordingly, i.e. number of votes for, number of votes against and the number of abstentions. Where a member has declared a non-registerable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. Before I finish, I would like just to pay my thanks to Councillor Fred Greenslade, who has now left this committee. He's been a loyal, hard-working member of the committee all the way through. Excuse me. Because of changeovers in political membership, Ian Thomas gave up his seat temporarily, and now Ian has come back again. Welcome back, Ian, and Fred has left us, but I'd like to put on record our thanks to Fred for all his hard work. Before we start today's business, I'll ask the Democratic and Governance Officer to confirm members and officers' attendance. So over to you, Joe, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So committee members, I'll now call your name. Please confirm your name and your electoral division, please. So Councillor Martin Alvey.
So Martin Alvey, Councillor for Fiott and Plain Place.
Councillor John Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Constantine, Morning and Budok.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Malcolm Brown will be joining us from 12:30 today.
Yeah.
Next one is Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Good morning, Councillor Nikki Chopak, Pound Stock Division.
Thank you. Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Good morning, Councillor Dominic Fairman, St Evans and Broad.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Giles.
Good morning, Councillor Pauline Giles, St Blaisy Division.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Councillor Stephen Knightley, Weybridge East.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Luke.
Councillor Matt Luke, Penwithwick and Boscopper.
Thank you. Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
Hello, Cornelius Olivier, Penzance Central Division.
Thank you. Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, Mullion and Grade Ruin Division.
Thank you. Councillor John Simmons.
Yes, good morning, Councillor John Simmons, Penryn East and Myler.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Thomas.
Good morning, Ian Thomas, excuse me, Cornwall Councillor, Red Roof South.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Mike Thomas, Helston North.
Thank you. And just double checking, I'm not sure whether Councillor Kevin Towell is at the meeting today. Councillor Towell, are you there? No, Councillor Towell isn't with us today at present. Today we're also joined by a cabinet member, which is Rob Nolan, Councillor Rob Nolan. He's the portfolio holder for Environment and Public Protection. And Councillor Adam Painter, Deputy Leader of the Council, is hoping to attend later for the cabinet member section of the meeting. We also have officers in attendance today, and I'll just read out the list of officers that we have with us. We have Sophie Hoskin, she's the Strategic Director of Neighbourhoods. From Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, we have Mark Hewitt, the Chief Fire Officer. We have Justin Sharp, Area Manager, Head of Community Risk Reduction. From Communities and Public Protection, we have Alan Hampshire, Service Director, Communities and Public Protection. We have Simon Mould, Head of Communities. We have Erica Sorensen, Amethyst Strategic Intelligence Manager. We have Sarah Necker, Community Safety Officer. We have Julie Zezamides, Head of Library and Information Service. We have Ellie Hammersley, Project Manager. From Environment, we have Peter Marsh, Service Director Environment. From Finance, we have Ellie Wilcox, Head of Financial Planning and Insight, Tracy Stepney, Strategic Finance Manager, and Melissa Dyer, Business Reporting Manager. From Democratic Services, we have myself, Joanne Heather, who's a Democratic and Governance Officer supporting the meeting today. We have Lynn Davey, who's also a Democratic and Governance Officer, who's producing the meeting today. And in the background from Democratic Services, we have Ian Buckingham, Democratic Support Officer, who's managing the live stream for us today. Later on, when we look at the Safer Cornwall Partnership Plan, we will have the Chairman of Safer Cornwall with us, who is Jim Pearce. And also later, listening into the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Risk-Based Inspection Programme inquiry item, we will be having John Robertson, and he's from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. That's all from me, Chairman. Back to you.
Thank you, Jo, and thank you, Ellie. I see that you're leaving the meeting for now and coming back just for your item. That's fine, thank you. Right, so we start off the meeting on the agenda with apologies for absence, please. I think we've got apologies from Edwina, who is our cabinet member for oh dear life, for climate change. I shall get it in a minute. Edwina isn't very well at the moment. She's had an operation, but she sends her love to everybody, and I'm sure we'll miss her. But she said to me this morning that if there are any questions later on in that slot, if I let her have them, she will get an answer for you. So that's from Edwina. Is there anybody else we've got apologies from, Jo?
Not at the moment, Chair.
I suppose apologies from Malcolm for late attendance, because he's on another council meeting at the moment.
Yes, right. I haven't heard from Councillor Towell.
Yeah, thank you. The next item is declarations of interest. That's if anybody's got a declaration of interest on any item on this agenda, any of the council, any of the committee members. I'll just hang on for a second to see if you put an X in the box if you need to make a declaration. No, okay, so that's lovely. So now we move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November. That's on page 1 of your agenda pack. I would like to propose them as a true record, and I'll ask Dominic if you would second them.
Yeah, happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you very much. You've all had a chance to read them already, so is everybody happy that they are a true record of that meeting, please? Can I ask Jo to take a vote on that?
Thank you, Chairman. So, members, the recommendation is that the minutes are agreed and they be signed as a true record by the Chairman. I'll now call out each committee's members' names in turn. Please will you confirm your name and advise whether you wish to vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey.
Martin Alvey, 4.
Councillor John Bastin.
John Bastin, 4.
Councillor Malcolm Brown isn't here at the moment. Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Nikki Chopak, 4.
Sir Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, 4.
Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles, 4.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley, 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, 4.
Cornelius Olivier.
4, Cornelius Olivier.
Thank you.
And the minutes, right.
Thank you. Councillor Carolyn Rull.
Yes, Carolyn Rull, 4.
Councillor John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Councillor Mike Thomas, 4.
And just checking, is Councillor Kevin Towell there? No, Councillor Towell. I can confirm that the motion's been carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mike, I see that you put an X in the box as we were going through the vote. Is there something you wanted to raise?
Yes,
Matt?
I just wanted to check under item on page 3 about the Dave Watkins was going to add to his report about Helston, which has been referenced. Just wondering whether there's been any come back on that.
Right, let's see who, I think Pete Marsh is with us, is he? I know Dave has left the meeting. Pete, are you with us at the moment? Pete Marsh?
Yes, I'm not aware of the report being amended, but I will follow that up on your behalf with David and ensure that it is.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Peter. Thank you.
He did agree to, didn't he, Mike? Yeah. Joe, you wanted to come back in.
Chairman, I was just saying, I think I do recall receiving an email from Dave Watkins to say that it was in process.
Right, thank you.
But I can also double check.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. That's lovely. Excuse me. Right, item 4 on the agenda is public questions. Do we have any public questions, please, Joe?
Chairman, we haven't received any public questions today.
Right, okay, thank you very much, my love. So now we move on to item 5, and we're now starting the pre-decision scrutiny policy development. So item 5 is looking at the budget and the medium-term financial plan. I think Sophie is going to lead on this one, or is it Ellie? No, Ellie Wilcox first, I believe. Ellie, are you there, please?
I am. Thank you, Councillor Rule. I'm going to give an introduction, and then I'll be passing over to Sophie to take you through kind of the question side. So thank you. So this report brings forward the Cabinet's latest proposals for the budget 21-22 and the medium-term financial plan up to 2024-25. It is being presented to all the overview and scrutiny committees during January. The draft budget and the MTFP presented at Cabinet and the overview and scrutiny committees in the autumn outlined that the council needed to make savings of around £36 million in the 21-22 financial year in order to deliver a balanced budget. Following review and critical challenge, as well as announcements contained in the spending review and the finance settlement, there is now a balanced budget position for the 21-22 year with a small surplus of £150,000. The latest MTFP includes planned savings of around 32 million, of which 18 million need to be delivered next year. In the later years of the MTFP, there is a gap of around 26 million, which increases to 27 million, which will need to be closed through the Council's transformation programme. That means over the period of this 4-year plan, total savings of around 60 million are required to be delivered. It's clearly been an extraordinary year in which to set a balanced budget. COVID-19 has had a profound impact on the Council's finances, and while central government has provided financial compensation in the current financial year, the financial impact of the pandemic is expected to continue long into 21-22 and potentially future years. Government has recently announced COVID funding relating to next year, but not all of this has been built into the base budget as this is going to be used to support further anticipated COVID costs, such as the additional costs coming through from adult social care, children's social care and homelessness, amongst others. So the Council's budget for 21-22 has been focused on trying to achieve financial stability amidst this challenging and uncertain climate. As a result, the following principles have been applied to in setting this budget strategy. So we've tried to ensure that as far as possible, day-to-day spend on services is funded from recurrent income sources and not from one-offs, such as non-recurrent grants or the use of reserves. So essentially, we're not using our savings to pay for our day-to-day expenditure. The Council holds sufficient reserves to ensure financial resilience based on the level of financial risk arising from activities. So the Section 151 officer has set as an absolute minimum £35 million in the Council's General Fund reserve, but the level may need to rise as the levels of risks arising out of the pandemic also increase. Growth proposals need to be matched with an equal level of savings. In demand-driven services, growth would only be recognised if there was an absolute evidence of growth and that there was a plan in place to manage the increasing costs, which is known as an intervention plan. So table 1 in the report shows how the balanced budget has now been achieved, which is following the budget gap that was presented in the autumn. So these are the savings that I referred to before. There has also been the announcement in the spending review of the adult social care precept of 3%, which has been added to the council tax, which gives an overall council tax charge of 4.99%. By applying this adult social care precept of 3%, this increases or provides an extra not just over £9 million of income that will go to adult social care, although their pressures exceed 11 million. There's been additional savings through the voluntary redundancy process and also through the greater management of third-party spend. There's been revisions around our funding assumptions following the notification of actual grants, as well as the use of a few one-off grants. And there's also been some technical adjustments to be able to help to close the gap for 1 year only, and until the more sustainable recurrent savings can be found over the remaining plan. So for the second consecutive year, a one-off spending review and settlement was provided by the government. A multi-year settlement is expected to be carried out in 21. And due to the impact of COVID-19, we've also seen reduced levels of income collected for both council tax and business rates when compared to our budgeted position for the current financial year. As a result, we're estimating a deficit which must be spread evenly over the 3 years from next financial year up until 23-24. And we're also projecting that COVID-19 will continue to impact on our council tax and business rates income into 21-22, and we have had to adjust our income accordingly. So this report is part of the budget scrutiny process, where your knowledge of services, you have the opportunity to bring forward potential alternative and additional options for the council's budget, whether through additional savings or reductions to growth assumptions, but specifically within the services under the remit of this committee. Appendix 1 to this report is for information and sets out the proposed total budgets by directorate and by service for the next 4 years, and Appendix 2 to the report provides the full list of proposed 21-22 savings for this directorate. So that was all I was going to say at this point, so I'm going to hand over to Sophie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, and good morning, members. So hopefully you'll all have had a chance to study the detail of this report. In relation to the services looked after and scrutinised by this committee, the bulk of the information is within section 5 of the report. The first table you'll see shows the changes from the 2021 budget to the draft 21-22 budget. I'm not proposing to go through all the detail of each of the services, but I will pick out a couple of changes that will be of note to members, and we can then probably just move straight to taking questions from members as you want to put them. So just in terms of the communities and public protection detail, which starts on page 20 of the report, and there's the key changes are around, and this is similar for all of them, is that we won't be taking the pay inflation into account due to the pay freeze. There's the contractual inflation has been included. The ambition for reducing third-party spend across the whole council is not detailed in this, so we're assuming that it stays the same at the moment, but there may be adjustments to that as that detail is worked through. We've also there's a small budget uplift that members will remember the discussions around antisocial behaviour caseworkers. So we have had variants from Together for Families, and the housing service budget will come in to support that, so there won't be a reduction in that service. So so thank you for your support on that. If I move on to the environment, the two things I wanted to point out are actually about future years. So in the column for 22-23, you'll notice that there's a reduction in the climate change funding. So if we have of 1.5 million, so that's the actual reduction in the budget for the activity associated with the team. The funding for the team remains, but the activity around climate change funding was only for 2 years. You'll also notice in the column for 23-24 there is a reduction in the waste management, or there's a pressure in waste management. That's because that actually I think is going to be resolved in the papers that go to Cabinet and onto Council. So it'll actually show a pressure of around about £250,000, I think. Ellie may come in and correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's the plan for the papers that go forward to Cabinet. Then in terms of the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, the main thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, which you will know from previous discussions, is the changes to the income targets for Phoenix, and that's been part of our right sizing of budgets. So it was an unachievable income targets had been built into the budget year after year, and every year we were missing those. So it seems sense to actually right size the budget so that it's achievable and realistic. So that, and there's also been an adjustment in terms of pay due to a review of some officers' contracts. So those are the kind of key things that I wanted to draw attention to. I would also go back to the beginning in terms of the recommendation, and just to remind members that any adjustments that you might want to make to budgets within the Directorate must have associated balancing proposals. So, Chair, if you want to, that's probably it from me for the moment, but if you want to take questions, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie and Ellie. That was very good, and the report was very clear to understand as well, which was good. So well done on that, because sometimes they're a little bit difficult to wade through, aren't they? But I thought it was really good this time. Yes, any colleagues wish to ask any questions, please? I've got Cornelius Olivier first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to put my camera on, by the way?
It's up to you, my darling. As long as we can hear you, whichever, it's entirely up to you.
Yeah. Right. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Firstly, about the decision that was taken on Tuesday to freeze the allowances system. How much I mean, I should know this perhaps, but how much of a saving does that represent in the projected budget? Is my first question. So the fact we were freezing the allowances rather than introducing the new system recommended by the independent inquiry, I'd like to know, and there probably is a figure for that, fairly accessible. It was probably even told to us on Tuesday. My other questions about budget, right, is that the waste collection budget, built into that somehow, without being precise, was a projected growth in earnings for the council, because we were going to be charging and collecting from holiday let business premises. Of some 50% were using the domestic waste service. We were going to move in on that area. Now I've tried my own guesses about how much we could raise, but has anybody got any definite figures about how much we're intending to raise, or are we not allowed to say it? But I think that would be a very interesting figure for many people, and if there was a possibility we could speed that up, that rather than a gradual accumulation of income through that, us collecting waste from holiday let businesses, we could really speed it up. That might help. And the two other questions, if you'll forgive me, Chair, which are purely factual, right, is what is the Forest for Cornwall projected to cost us? Obviously a very good thing. What is the Forest for Cornwall projected to cost us? And within that, what's the budget for urban trees? So Forest for Cornwall urban trees. And finally, what does the park and ride cost us per year? I think I've probably used up my quota of seconds. Okay. And also, could I just say finally that I do appreciate Councillor Thomas's attempts to cheer us up. But personally, I think it's the Vice Chair's job to be a warm-up man before the meeting. Okay. I haven't heard anything from him yet. Right.
Okay, Cornelius, thank you. Sophie, I'll come to you first for that. I think that the monitoring officer did say on Tuesday the amount. So have you got the figures there?
I haven't got the figures. I don't know if Ellie has got them to hand. Well, or we
by my recollection, it was if that's any help, it was I think you'd built in 200,000 savings if we'd gone, well, before you had the result of the IRP panel. And because we didn't take it, the monitoring officer was saying it's something like 500,000. So perhaps, Ellie, have I given you enough time to come up with an answer for that one, darling?
So you're correct. The 200,000 is what we have got currently built into the budget. I will need to go away and confirm what the actual decision was, or is whether it was passed forward into the future year for the actual decision on that, and where those savings then might lie. But at this point, the budget still has the 200,000 savings. Additional savings have not been built in at this point.
Okay. It's just, it might be a not, in our current situation, it's a not insignificant sum of money, and I'm sure many people have good ideas as to what to do with it, including me. Right, that's all right.
Thanks. Back to you again, Sophie, for the other question.
I'm actually, Chair, in fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring Pete Marsh in to talk about the commercial waste income targets, and also for the Forest for Cornwall, though I suspect he may want to come back to you with some figures for that, Councillor Olivier. And the park and ride is actually not a matter for this committee, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think it does come under us. I think that's, yeah. Okay, thank you. So, Pete, over to you, my love, please.
Okay, a good question from Councillor Olivier in terms of commercial waste. We have baked into the budget. There is an incremental start. This is a start from scratch, and we're not too far off getting letters out. The new waste contract starts next month, and we're geared up, ready to write to a number of people to encourage them onto the service. But we've made income projections that are baked into the budget of £1 million by 23-24, and when you take into account bulky and commercial, bulky and green waste as well, then that's about £1.3 million by 23-24. But we have got a flat start. We are at zero, Councillor Olivier, and it is difficult to project how that uptake will happen. It's a competitive marketplace with competitors already operating. So we have plans afoot, and we have baked some figures into the budget. In terms of Forest for Cornwall, I've not got the numbers in front of me, but I'm regularly appraised of where that's at, and we've got a significant. We've been picking up funds from lots of different areas. This isn't a Forest for Cornwall that purely the Cornwall Council will deliver. The Woodland Trust have introduced 56,000 trees, if I remember correctly, this year through different initiatives. The Wildlife Trust has been encouraging people to find acorns and the like in terms of seeds wild and start to propagate those. So this isn't a cost that sits entirely squarely with the council. I expect that there will still be other funding streams that we'll be able to tap into as we go forward. So I've not got a number that I can give you right now, but outside of the meeting, I'm more than happy to provide you with the budget figures.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jake.
Could I just say, Chair, I'm really sorry to cut this, but within that figure for Forest for Cornwall, I did ask for a specific, if there was a specific fund for urban trees as well, if I could have a figure for that.
People get that, people get that information for you, I think, isn't it, Pete?
There is. I think that's about 150,000, Councillor Libby, from my memory, in terms of where we are. But I'm happy to confirm all of those numbers for you separately.
Thank you very much. If you could let the whole committee know, perhaps pass it to Joe, and then it can be circulated.
Happy
Thank you.
to
That'd be good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next question is from Dominic Fairman, please, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just say I'll take Cornelius's rebuke in the spirit it was given. And I'll just add that had we taken on a vote on whether he should turn his camera on or not, I would have voted against. I'll move on to my questions. Sophie, first one for you, because I just picked up what you said about the budget for action on climate change having a sort of cliff edge. I take it that's because there was a political decision to do it, to commit ourselves for so many years. So I just wonder, should we be, isn't it, climate change obviously isn't going to go away in 2 years' time. So do we need to be thinking about renewing that commitment now for the longer term? And then my other three questions are for Ellie, please. So the first question is, obviously the council tax collection this year has caught us off. The pandemic's obviously affected that badly. So the tax base for next year, we're expecting a decrease, I think, of around 0.76%, which seems low given the dramatic rise in universal credit that we're seeing across North Cornwall anyway. And I noticed that the Office of Police and Crime are projecting a reduction in the tax base next year of 2.75%. Or whether they're being overly pessimistic on that. Then the 1 year mitigation for highways maintenance. Now, does that, when it comes out of reserves and then creates a pressure in other years, is that a clever way of dipping into the £35 million red line on reserves, or not? And then finally, I did mention this before to Tracy Langley, and I would like an answer really. Early on in the budget presentations, we're always presented with a slide which compares the council tax in Cornwall with the other authorities in the southwest, and showing that we aren't a very high taxing authority. What I would like to see is what the council tax take in each area is as a percentage of that area's household income, because I feel that slide is meaningless without getting in the broader context of what the household income is in that particular local authority. So I've tried to do it myself. I've soon discovered that it's fraught with difficulties. So I would prefer to get a professional opinion on it, please.
Thanks, Dominic. So Sophie, do you want to do the one first and then we'll go to Ellie?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Fairman. Yes, I wanted to draw your attention to this because it is in effect a bit of a cliff edge. What we are doing is we are continuing to seek external funding for our programme. Is it a matter to bring forward to this in this budget? I think we have the funding for the 21-22. So in terms of the budget we're setting for next year, no, we don't need to bring it forward. I would advise it is a matter that the new administration will want to consider quite soon, I think, after the elections, and we will be making recommendations in next year's budget about this, but no, I think not for today probably, but I did want members to have sight of it for the medium term.
Thank you. And then Ellie, please.
Yeah, thank you. So your first question around kind of the council tax base. So I'm not really in a place to comment about what the Devon and Cornwall Crime Commissioners' assumptions are and around their tax base, but it is also worth noting that they will be taking into account on their assumptions the whole of Devon, so therefore the all of the districts plus the other kind of unitary areas, or kind of Torbay and Plymouth and Exeter areas as well. So they might be seeing different figures coming through. So you are right, our assumption is that our tax base is reducing around kind of the 1% mark, and to kind of provide some assurance around that, we are regularly monitoring our tax base, and we have actually seen an increase in the number of properties that have come on to our tax base over the kind of the past 12 months. Even through the pandemic, we are seeing more houses coming in. So we have been prudent in that we have assumed that there will be a very small amount of growth. We do think there'll be still more coming on with the kind of the ambitions around house building and completions, etc. But we have reduced our assumptions, our tax base around council tax support. Because what this means is that the more households that receive this support, it essentially means it's less council tax that we can collect. So we have increased the number who are receiving that. So we've seen a 5% increase this year already, so in the current financial year, and then we're also assuming that another 5% will come on next year. So we have adjusted for council tax support, and we have also adjusted our collection rate and reduced that by 1% as well. So we are assuming that we will be collecting at least 1% less council tax on a permanent basis. So this isn't just about delaying it into future years. This is kind of with the stuff that we will never be able to recover. We have reduced that by 1% as well. So when you put all of that into the mix, it gives kind of an overall impact of about 1% down. And as I said, kind of we are tracking and monitoring this. And we've done our Q3 forecast, and we haven't chosen to change those assumptions off the back of our Q3 forecast on the actuals that have been coming through. Your question in relation to the the reduced transfer into reserves around highways maintenance. So your question was relating to the general fund, that 35 million, and no, it's not going into that 35 million because it actually gets put into what's called the capital financing reserve. So it's not impacting on that general fund. And then your question or your ask around kind of being able to provide the council tax in a proportion or percentage of what household income is, I'll take that away and work with other colleagues to be able to collect that information. As you say, it's we'll have to get that average household income by district and be able to compare that across. So I'll need to draw on members from other teams, but we'll work to get something to you on that.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Is that okay, Dominic?
Yeah, that's all fine. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir. The next one is Martin Alvey, please, with a question.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if Ellie or Sophie want to field this one. Later today, we're going to be considering the recommendations from the risk-based inspection programme for the fire service, and if the inquiry recommendations are accepted by the committee and then on to cabinet and accepted, there are some cost implications to that. I appreciate relatively small beer in the context of the wider council and even the fire services budget, and there is the potential for some spend to save there around the primary authority scheme. But I was just wondering how the budget setting process now takes account of the fact that if our recommendations are supported, there will be some additional costs on the fire service moving forward into the new financial year.
Yeah, I'll start on this one. Ellie might want to come in and Mark Hewitt might want to come in as well. And without wishing to preempt the discussions later on the agenda, what I would propose is if there is an additional cost arising out of that, that we would find a way of funding that either through some grant funding that we have available to us for Protect for the first year, that we and also by rejigging some of our resources within the service, and then use the review of the IRMP and the work that we're going to be doing to review our existing resources over the coming year to amend the base budget going forward to include for the fire service to actually include the any pressures arising from your recommendations today. So I don't see an impact on the 21-22 budget, or we will have to manage within what we've set today, unless members are minded to direct other resources from within the fire and rescue service budget to amend the base budget. Does that help?
Yeah. Martin, is that okay, Danny?
Yes, that's fine, thanks. And clearly, hopefully, if the primary authority scheme takes off, then hopefully moving forward, that money will be recouped elsewhere. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Part of the objective, I understand. We can cover this later. Is in terms of income generating post as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Next question is from Pauline Giles, please.
Yeah, I've asked about this before, and I just want some clarity, really. So this is about the pressures relating to the waste management. clothing banks on the HWRCs are contracted out by Suez, and in the last 12 months have been allocated to a national charity. Do we get a percentage of the profit that they make from the sales of the clothes from the HWRCs? Because we were thinking it's around 2 million. It might be less, obviously, because of COVID. If not, can we find out when the current contract ceases with the charity? And wouldn't it be a good idea to bring in-house using an independent collection service? Anything that helps balance the books without sacrificing services has got to be a good thing. Not.
Thanks, Pauline. I guess that goes to Pete, does it, Sophie? Yeah. Peter, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, I think we contracted with Suez through till 2039, Councillor Giles, and that in that contract, the disposal of material is the contractor's risk. So the way in which the PFI contract was established passes risk, because sometimes material has value. I can think in the past when cardboard had quite significant value, and then that value has fallen away as markets change and as they shift. So when the council set up that contract, it effectively passported material risk to the contractor. So it's the contractor's issue as to what they do with it, and we don't have influence or an ability to bring it back in-house without them paying financial compensation to the contractor through to the end of the term, which probably wouldn't be cost effective. So we've wrapped up all of those risks, bundled them up and put them with the contractor, which has ups and downs, and this is probably one that you're describing that might be a down, but there are others that will be on the upside. So I'm afraid it won't be as simple as for us to grab that income back without compensating the contractor, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Pete. Can we desist from putting questions in the chat box? That is supposed to be just the X's to say you want to speak. Mike Thomas, Cornelius has already spoken once, so I'll bring you in first. You're asking, has the police precept been set yet? No, it hasn't, but you're welcome to speak, my love.
Yes, sorry, different chairs on different scrutiny committees have different protocols on that, and some are quite happy to have the question as it saves time, but I'm just simply asking whether we have any more information, and whether Dominic, I think, is possibly involved in this as well.
So am I. Yeah, it's the 5th of February, I think, isn't it, Dominic?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the proposal will be put to the panel on the 5th of February, Mike.
Right, thank you.
Whether they agree then or not. Yeah, okay. And then Cornelius wanted to come back with a question, please.
Thank you very much. I should, my apologies for putting my question in the chat box, Chair, but I thought as it was a sort of a request for a personal contact, it might be more appropriate in the chat box than in the discussion. But I totally take the point that it should all be in the live stream, even if it's a kind of personal contact request like that. The question I had, because Ellie was talking about when estimating council tax receipts about, housing numbers are going up in Cornwall. Even during the pandemic, houses are being built and moved into. Do we have a figure for the number of houses that are being lost to the council tax precept because they're being converted into holiday let business premises? I've kind of assumed that form of conversion might accelerate. Now there's so much money to be got through business grants from the government. So do we have a figure for that? Or I'm not off the top of your head, Ellie, but in the sense of, could you tell us how many properties have been converted, say, in the last year to that status from being council tax paying to business rates, notional business rates payments on a holiday let business premises? So, sorry, that was slightly wordy, but I hope it was intelligible. Right.
Not sure that that comes under that remit is under this committee, but Ellie, are you able to help Cornelius, Councillor Olivier, on this one?
So it's a really good question, and I haven't got that level of detail to hand at the moment to be able to give to you, and it's quite difficult to track at times whether it's fallen off one and into another due to kind of the system side of it. But I'll take an action away to see if I can get a ballpark number for you. yeah, I'll see what I can find out, and I'll report back to the committee.
Yeah, thank you. If I could explain, Chair, the reason for me asking is a number of owners of holiday lets in my area have phoned me up to express their indignation at missing out on the business grants because they paid council tax, and therefore they were going to switch over to that status. Mm-hmm. So I would like to know if this is a widespread phenomenon, but thank you for your patience, Chair.
Thank you, Spinner. And also Sophie has responded to your inquiry about who's the Forest for Cornwall lead officer. It's in the chat box. But please, the chat box, as Joe says, is subject to FOI, so there shouldn't be any chat in it when it's a formal meeting, which of course this one is. When it's an informal one, it's a lot more relaxed. But no, it's not. It is supposed to just be the X in the box to say you want to speak or make a point of order. Dominic, you wanted to come back with another question.
Yeah, no, I just wonder if it's the appropriate time to share some recommendations.
I'll just do one more call out to see if anybody else has got anything they want to ask. Any questions? Anybody else on the committee, or any of our colleagues that aren't actually members of this committee? Do they have any questions, please? We'll just give a second or two to see if there's any more X's coming. No, I don't think so. So yes, Dominic, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully that's it. So I've taken the recommendations as they are on the paper, except I've added a little bit at the end. So I hope it's Joe will advise me whether it's appropriate or not. So that number one is just as is, yeah, because I don't think we've come up with anything new. And number two is about the future years, the long-term plan. And I've put a bit saying that we recommend that early in the next administration, this committee makes time to look at a sustainable funding model for the future action on climate change from 2022 onwards.
Yep, sounds sensible to me. Joe, would you like to comment on that, please, Joe Heather?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's permissible.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Dominic, you're proposing that, are you?
I am.
Can I have a seconder for those proposals, please?
Oh,
you put an X in the box.
That Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, you're happy to second. Thank you.
Yep.
So we'll hand over to Joe then. Sorry, is there any other recommendations, or is that no? Okay, so we'll go across to Joe, please, if we may, to take the vote on this one. So the proposal is made by Councillor Fairman and seconded by Councillor Luke. And over to you to take the vote, please, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. And the proposals are as were read out previously by Councillor Fairman, just for the sake of the live stream. Okay, so we're going to vote. So once again, I will call your names in turn. Please can you confirm your name and advise me whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So first of all, it's Councillor Martin Alvey.
For.
Councillor John Bastin.
John Bastin, for.
Councillor Malcolm Brown, I understand you're not there. Councillor Nikki Chopak.
For.
Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, for.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles, for.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Councillor Stephen Knightley, for.
Councillor Luke.
Councillor Luke, for.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
Councillor Olivier is for.
Councillor Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, for.
Councillor John Simmons.
Yeah, John Simmons, for.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, for.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Councillor Mike Thomas, for.
And just checking, is Councillor Kevin Towell on the line?
Yes, on the line now.
Did you listen to the item, Councillor Towell, and did you hear the recommendations?
Yes, I was present during the discussion.
Thank you. And how would you like to vote?
For. Thank you.
So, Chairman, just to advise that the motion has been carried.
Thank you very much for that, and Dominic, for sharing your screen. Thank you. Right, now we're ahead of time a little bit, but because the people involved, Erica and those that were involved in the next item, aren't really expecting us to be there until 11:30, which is, so we're really doing quite good business here at the moment. I'm proposing that we still have a 5-minute break. I know we haven't been going very long. Thank you, Ellie, very much for your help. If we have a 5-minute break now, and perhaps Joe or Lynn could contact Erica and the people that are involved in the next item, which is the refresh of the Safer Cornwall Partnership Plan, just to get them here. I know they've left us not expecting to come back for another half an hour, so perhaps if we take a 5-minute break, so it's now 10:50 by me, so if we come back at 10:55, excuse me, and hopefully we'll have got Erica and her colleagues here in time for that. Thank you very much. So if you could mute your microphones and switch your cameras off, and we'll be back here again just for 5 minutes. Thank you. Thanks, Erica. I see you're there, so that's good. Thank you. We're back in 5 minutes. Right, it's now 10:55. Sarah and Erica, I see you're both here. Erica, did you have any joy with getting hold of Jim Pearce and Simon Mould for us, please? Erica?
Chairman, she may be still trying to do so.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm back.
Oh,
Sorry.
Did you manage to get hold of Jim or Simon?
I have been able to get hold of Jim, so he said he is able to join us early, so hopefully he will be able to join us in a moment.
Lovely.
So he has literally just emailed me back.
Lovely. Okay, we'll just hang on a moment to give him a chance to come in then, because it'd be nice to have him start the presentation off in a way.
Yeah.
Simon, I think, is tied up until lunchtime anyway, isn't he? I believe.
Oh, is he? Okay, I haven't had a reply from Simon.
I got a feeling he said he was chairing another meeting until lunchtime, till 12 o'clock-ish.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, Chairman. My apologies. I have just come out of the other meeting, so I can.
Oh, Simon.
Hello, how are you?
Nice to have you here with us, darling. We're just waiting for Jim. I think Jim is hoping to join us. Jim Pearce.
He did say he was able to. He's just emailed me again. Excuse me.
It's our fault because we've come earlier than expected. So.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm more than happy if needed to help Chair to cover for Jim until he's able to join, and I'm sure if it would be appropriate we could invite Jim in for a few words.
Yes.
After
I think we'll do that rather than keep everybody waiting. Sorry. Yeah.
I've just asked him if he wants Simon to start actually, so I suspect the answer will be yes.
Okay, so we'll start off with Simon Mould, please, then, if you will.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us back. As Head of Communities and also as the Vice Chair now of the Safer Cornwall Partnership, absolutely delighted to be bringing back for your review the Safer Cornwall Partnership final plan. Hopefully you will note it's taken on board comments that have been made and observations through this committee from the previous times that we brought it back, and I will pass over to Erica now, who will talk you through on that presentation. So thank you very much, and happy to take questions as we go through.
Thank you very much, and we'll wait to questions till the end. I think probably be the easiest. Erica, I think you're going to share your screen for us, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'll just do that.
Oh. Inspector Pearce is in the lobby, so I've just admitted him in.
Do you want me to hold on a moment then, and I'll?
Yes, that will be lovely if we could.
While you welcome Jim, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the rank. I'm sorry, but I know that Jim Pearce is now with us, who is the chairman of Safer Cornwall. So, Jim, would you like to address us, my love? It's lovely to have you back. I know you've been on a secondment, but it's nice to have you back, and welcome to the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. It's nice to be back. Thank you for the welcome. Although it feels like I've been here for ages, to be honest, with what's been happening in the world. So you've got Simon and Erica. I can see them both on. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining. In all honesty, I think the easiest thing to do to manage time would be to hand straight over to Erica to go through the presentation, and then myself and Simon and of course Erica will be available for any questions after.
I think it was just that we wanted to acknowledge you coming back again and to welcome you to the meeting. Oh, hello. Nice to meet you there. Yeah, so welcome back, my love, anyway, and we'll hand over to Erica to take us through the presentation, please, if we may. You need to make it the big picture if you can.
Yes, I'll just do that. Sorry, I just needed to come back and unmute myself because I'm only working on one screen. So, so the joy of technology. I do apologise. Right. I'd also just like to say we have Sarah Necker with us as well, who's been safety officer and exploitation lead for the partnership. Right, so I'll just go back to, let me just check that that's showing okay.
Yes, that's lovely, thank you.
That's showing okay, right, brilliant, thank you. So I'm back here with you to talk about the partnership plan annual refresh for 21-22. So this follows the development session that we had with yourselves in November, and this session today is a key element of your scrutiny of Safer Cornwall, which is part of the Council's statutory duty under the Crime and Disorder Act. So this is our statutory 3-year plan. It's the second refresh of the current cycle, final year of the plan, and the main things that this plan needs to achieve. So it needs to reflect and respond effectively to the latest evidence from the strategic assessment, and this year that also included looking at the impacts of COVID and what we expected to happen going forward. We discussed that at length when we came to talk to you in November, and also we wanted to use it to promote the shared vision and values that partners came together to agree in 2019, and promote the strong links to other strategies and the improvements we've made in cross-partnership working, particularly with safeguarding partnerships. So that's just the timeline there. So we're right at the end of it now, where we're approving the final plan. Let's go to the next slide. So that's the vision for Safer Cornwall, and Cornwall's communities are safe, healthy and resilient. So this vision was agreed by all the statutory partners and the 2 safeguarding partnerships, and that's stated explicitly in the introduction to the plan, and it's been integrated into the new Together We Can Cornwall plan strategy for Cornwall 2050, and it forms part of Transition 5 to achieve safe, healthy, resilient communities. So the Safer Cornwall plan provides that key route for delivery, and actually I've described that in more detail in the pack. So just a quick summary really of those recommendations, and so we discussed, as I said, the evidence and the recommendations at length at the informal, and we took away your comments and feedback. So in summary, so the areas of greatest risk and harm haven't changed. So those are domestic abuse and sexual violence, exploitation, vulnerability and complex needs, and that's all described in your agenda pack. We did note some areas of increased and change risk, but everything that had come through the evidence, the response to those things largely fall within the scope of the partnership's existing priorities and delivery plan. So we're continuing to focus on those 4 priority outcomes, which were people with multiple vulnerabilities, communities, workforce and offenders. We've refreshed the presentation of the core work plan and the work areas under these headline outcomes, so we've got some additional things like the community safety toolkit, which extends the learning and the benefits of the Safer Towns approach to all communities. So that's something we've brought in this year as actually further to feedback from yourselves. We've put in an enhanced response to 2 areas, so they do come within our priorities, but we thought the partnership work that was being done in these areas needed more focus, so and more promotion in the plan. So those 2 areas are exploitation and county lines, including dangerous drugs networks, and preventing serious violence and knife crime is included within there, in our joint exploitation strategy. And also the complex needs operational groups, which were established on sort of a pilot base in some of our safer towns. We're now doing that routinely where it's needed, and these are local operational groups to mobilise intensive support for the most vulnerable and complex people in our communities. It's essentially the place-based delivery of our complex needs strategy. So that's a summary of what's in the plan. So we know that we have some risks and challenges. We have capacity pressures across the system, particularly for that place-based response that I've just talked about, and demands across multiple areas, needing that more intensive work from partners, but particularly through Safer Towns, but through the strength of the partnership more generally, we're set up to be able to do that. But it does place significant pressure on services, particularly outreach and supported housing and those frontline community safety resources. There's obviously the ongoing demands and the impacts of COVID and how we balance that with other priorities. So as well as the kind of impacts on public health, we have some challenges for community safety, so particularly a rise in domestic abuse and other hidden harms, issues with drugs and alcohol,
potential rise in shoplifting and other thefts and other types of acquisitive crime like online frauds and black markets. And there are ongoing pressures through budgets and resources, which we're all aware of. Just one update that I did want to give you, under financial implications, I've made a reference to the OPCC's new Strategic Commissioning Intentions Framework, which was in its consultation phase when I put the report together before Christmas. And we've had an update in the new year. So it was the original proposal was that it would start mid-financial year in November, and actually further to consultation with the CSPs, the recommendation is to treat the whole year as a transition period. So that removes the in-year budget risk that I mentioned, which is a positive. That's due to be signed off at the Police and Crime panel on in early February. So that's a recommendation at the moment, but we're hopeful that will come to pass. Just a note on kind of how we evidence the benefits of the plan. So we evidence them incrementally year on year. Those are monitored and scrutinised through our performance framework, which you're very familiar with. It comes to you every July for scrutiny. We have some new platforms for monitoring performance and outcomes which were introduced in year. One of this is the COVID Insights dashboard, and also the planned framework for the new Cornwall plan. And I mean, importantly, so the partnership has achieved some really important cultural shifts through Safer Towns and the work we've been doing around complex needs through the lifetime of this plan. And it leaves a legacy of this particular plan, which is a robust platform from which partners can continue to work towards the whole system improvement, which we're all talking about and all striving for. And that's the end of the quick canter through. So ready for questions. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Erica. That was brilliant. You did it in the 5 minutes. That's really good.
Did I? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, well done. I'm impressed. Right, thank you. Any questions, please? Any colleagues wish to ask any questions of Erica or Jim or Simon? So the first one to indicate is Dominic, please. Dominic Fairman.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Erica, for that. So my first thing was that there's a flow chart on page 62 of the report, which I think shows the interaction between the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Safer Cornwall Partnership. So it's quite a complex. So it looks horrendously complex, how all the agencies interact. Are you struggling to find it, are you?
I know which one you mean. What do you want to ask about
it?
It
just, you know, as you know, a main thrust is to, as we go forward, is to sort of avoid duplication and get agencies working together. It looks amazingly complex, that flow chart. Have you put it there to indicate that perhaps there's more case for streamlining and agencies perhaps working together slightly more coherently? Because the chart itself looks like spaghetti junction.
It's a governance chart to show the kind of structure of the partnership and where it sits in relation to other partnerships. And we've tried to have tried to simplify it and try to only include those partnerships where we have kind of direct decision making with. So yes, it could be a lot more complicated than that, but it is intended to show the sort of the flow of information between the different groups, between the Health and Wellbeing Board and the partnership particularly, but also where it sits with One Vision and the safeguarding partnerships, which are kind of the key ones for us. So apologies if you found it complicated. But hopefully you can see how the partnerships are structured and talk to each other through that diagram. But if you've got any particular feedback on how we can improve it, I'd be happy to receive it.
No, that's fine. So I just wondered if it was there to highlight that perhaps there's you know, with the Health and Wellbeing Board, which I know meets at the same time as the Safer Cornwall Partnership, so there's perhaps less. But I'll leave Cornelius here, probably have more comments on that. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's fine. Have you got another question, Tony?
Yeah, I've got loads. Do you want me to wait at the end?
Yeah, no, carry on.
So the serious violence duty, which is being brought forward, does that have funding? Will that have funding to follow it? And if it does, who will that funding go to? then I have a question about the population. So we evidence that the population in Cornwall is increasing and what we expect it to be by a certain date. I'm aware that this year in particular that the UK population has dropped considerably, and it's been certain demographics that have left the UK, probably as a result of Brexit and other things. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect Cornwall and how that's going to affect your sort of delivery landscape for the Safer Cornwall Partnership. Then I wondered if the 6-week intervention into St Austell, whether there'd been any preliminary results or conclusions from that piece of work. And then finally, the suitable housing for those who've had experience with the criminal justice system. How engaged are Cornwall Housing with that, and what sort of response have we had from them?
Right, and Simon, you indicated you wanted to come in. Did you want to come in before Erica goes through the rest of those questions? Because I think it was on the first one you were going to comment.
Yeah, I can start if that would be of help. Thank you, Councillor Wall. So thank you for your questions, Councillor Fairman, as always. So the first one, I think, just going back to that structure piece on page 62, I think what it does do is it demonstrates the breadth of the work and the focus that's undertaken through the partnership. So it is just showing for individuals awareness that that is the governance model that we're working with. I would like to be able to provide absolute assurance, though, to members that the relationships and the interactions that we've got are phenomenally positive, and it's something that we've worked really hard on over the duration of this plan. So actually we have got probably more now than ever join up and linkages on how we are doing our work. So I think it does show that as that's one lens. But actually, if we were to do another lens about how that cross-partner working is taking place, there's an awful lot of dual conversations that are taking place as well. So the example I give on that diagram there, which was developed during the life of this plan, is the Joint Strategic Commissioning Operational Group, which is now bringing together all of those partners and wider, and looking at how we make sure we streamline, we simplify, and we bring together our capacity, maybe resources or funds, to commission things across the whole of that system. So I just wanted to provide some assurance that I note absolutely that that structure is complex, but some of that is referencing the fact that the reference that we have is very broad, but we are definitely working together on that. So I am always looking to see how we can make things simpler, but I'm also confident that we've got some fantastic working relationships across the piece. I will obviously defer the population data to somebody that's an expert, so I will defer that back to Erica if she doesn't mind, being called an expert and asking that. The St Austell piece, absolutely, that the 6-week intervention was insightful. We definitely addressed the original cohort and issues that were seen there, and we have seen a reduction overall from the original spike of ASB, noting that there has been an increase in awareness from community perspective the last week, which we are responding to again through the Safer St Austell piece. There are some broader issues that we are looking at, which are around policy decisions and looking at how we join up further intelligence, and we are still working on that. But what I am comfortable with is, again, through the Safer Towns principle, we've got the right people around the table looking on a weekly basis at what that intelligence is and what we need to do to be tasking against that. And be more than happy at another occasion to be able to provide more information if that would be suitable. And I think I'll defer back to Erica now, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Simon. Back to you again, Erica, please.
Okay, I was just Jim, did you want to answer the serious violence one?
Yeah, I just don't want to lose the thread around St Austell.
Okay.
It's always difficult doing the multiple questions, but if we do our best to pick up the St Austell ASB, and then we can perhaps refer back to the serious violence and so on. But I agree with everything that Simon said, just in terms of the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Safer Partnerships. That we've got to understand the difference between influence and command. So certainly our partnership is very much about influencing the health and wellbeing priorities and so forth, and the other way around, as opposed to it being a hierarchical command type chart. It's the only other point I wanted to get out. The St Austell situation at the moment that's being flagged up is very much the focus, particularly in terms of policing. I know that Sergeant Inspector Guard is having regular conversations there with MPs, councillors, town councils, county councillors, etc. The Safer Town Partnership is focusing on 2 or 3 issues, which, if I may put in perspective, is nowhere near the demand that St Austell was experiencing in July. This is a different type of an issue, but they are still very much involved in that. In terms of the serious violence duty, Erica, you'll be able to hopefully say what's happening government-wise, but I do know that it's attracted strong support from Police and Crime Commissioner, and there's a joint programme for reducing serious violence that is being sponsored by both the Chief Constable and the PCC, which will involve a degree of money that's been put aside for commissioning, for which Cornwall can bid into. So if I may, Erica, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll try and pick up on all the bits that haven't been addressed out of your questions. I just will say on the serious violence duty, just sort of pick up that last bit of what Jim has said. So the Serious Violence Board has commissioned, which is jointly led by the PCC and Chief Constable. They have commissioned a strategic needs assessment on serious violence, which we've participated in and which is due imminently. And off the back of that, there will be a strategy and there's a commitment of funding over a 4-year period, which we will have the opportunity to bid into. In terms of what the government are up to, so we've had some information about what to expect in the duty. There will be a new crime and policing bill appearing at some point in the next month. And then that's expected to come into effect probably in 2022, so we'll have some time to prepare. One of the key things is around making serious violence an explicit priority for community safety partnerships, and the terms of the new duty and how that's delivered. We were expecting education providers to be part of the people responsible, the statutory responsible authorities for the duty, but actually that hasn't been done now, and there will instead be a duty to cooperate with the main duty holders, but we're waiting to see exactly how that looks. But that's our kind of early heads up. So back to the population change question. So yes, we've seen a real shift in population change over the last 2 years actually, so the current year and the year before. Certainly last year it was the smallest population change that we'd seen for a decade, so it will change the kind of long-term projections. We haven't actually had revised long-term projections taking that into account yet. Based on our last projections that we had for population, we are still, and I think we are still expecting the population to grow, but it will be very different from one part of Cornwall to another, and we will see some areas where the population will decline. And through the intelligence group, we are working on what that looks like in a partnership sense. So it's just to provide some reassurance really that that's looked at on a regular basis. And your last point was around housing and criminal justice. So at our request, there is part of the partnership response to homelessness, the new strategy that's been launched around housing and homelessness. There is a criminal justice element in there. There's around housing offenders, and there is a partnership meeting that takes place around prison releases and about looking at offending options for prison releases, and housing are engaged in that. And they also come to the reducing reoffending strategy group. So yes, they are engaged.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers everything.
Yes, it does. And I think I'll take away from that the more spaghetti on the chart, the better, because it means there's more connections between different agencies.
Yeah, more working together, which is great. The next one to ask a question is Cornelius, please. Cornelius Olivier.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dominic mentioned the Health and Wellbeing Board, of which I am a member, and its work is both useful and interesting, I would say. However, it's not a cabinet. I need to make it clear it's not a cabinet that's issuing instructions to other bodies. It's more sort of strategy, development of strategy would be the best way of putting it. The antisocial behaviour and concerns about antisocial behaviour have re-emerged in the area I represent. But when you look at it, what it comes down to is less than 10 people, basically less than 10 individuals. It is manageable, and I wouldn't want the concern about antisocial behaviour in public to distract the police from focusing on issues that are actually more harmful in affecting fewer people or visible to fewer people, but more harmful. I think there's been an upsurge in antisocial behaviour. I've never, in the entire time I've been a councillor, had to deal with more neighbour disputes or nastier neighbour disputes than I have had over the last year or so, and I think that is all associated with lockdown and the frustrations arising from that. But my actual question is the Safer Cornwall partnership. Is there within it some kind of budgetary capacity, even if it's not its own money, it's channeling Police and Crime Commission money, small pots of money to support youth projects? Certainly in my community safety plan in Penzance, the development of youth facilities was one of our priorities. So I'd like to know if there's some kind of facility. And I'm not talking about large sums of money, just small enabling seed funding, you could perhaps call it.
Thanks, Cornelius. I think we'll hand over to Erica for that, you've indicated.
Yes. So I can provide you with an update on that. Over the last cycle of the PCC's term, we have had a single pot of money that's come to us from the PCC, which is the Community Safety Grant. And we have, and the majority of that has been allocated out to, well, all of that has been allocated out to our kind of priority budgets. But there will be an opportunity in the next funding framework, if it's signed off, for something called community grants, which will be a stream of money, sort of small amounts of money that communities will be able to bid for exactly the type of projects that you're talking about. So we're expecting to get some more details of that. That was part of the consultation process about the main grant that we had before Christmas, and we're expecting some more details about that imminently, and that will start, I believe, when we get into the new financial year. But I can provide some more information about that when it's known, and I believe they will be talking about it at Police and Crime Panel next month.
Well, can I just say, Chair, thank you very much for that response. And it wasn't just a general question, because there are specific proposals in Penzance, specific, quite highly developed proposals in Penzance, which would be looking to call upon that fund. Thank you.
So the fund will be administered through a third-party organisation, but as soon as we've got the details, we will share them.
Thank you, Erica. Perhaps if you could let Jo know, and then she can circulate to all the members of the committee, that would be helpful. Thank you very much for that. The next one with a question is Mike Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Erica. Happy New Year. Thank you for all the work that you do. I'm also a newish member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I agree with what Councillor Olivia has referenced, and I do share Councillor Fairman's concern about such diagrammatic representations. They always look a little bit better in colour, I suspect, rather than we're looking at shades of grey here. It's a bit more difficult to work them out. But I do think we need to think how we represent these and who the audience is, because yet again there are acronyms there that aren't easy to understand. But having said that, having attended quite a few Health and Wellbeing Board meetings, some of the diagrams they come up, you need to really try and have a dictionary with you, trying to work them out. Coming to my question, on page 51, page 3 of your report, masses of fascinating information in this, really good, a really helpful addition to any teacher of sociology in the area, really fantastic. But the point, I'm a bit concerned that the suggestion I made at various meetings about disconnecting those people who have very sadly lost their lives on Cornish roads from those who are seriously injured. And what was a consideration given to my suggestion that it be changed to those who were killed, which averages in a normal year, I believe, between 18 and 22, around that sort of area, to also having of life-changing injuries, because at the moment, as you know, it just simply reads 312 people were killed or seriously injured. I think the enormity of 22 or so people losing their lives is lost in that particular statement there. So that's my one question there. My second question relates to what Councillor Olivia referenced in terms of youth work. Very glad to hear that there may be some money available. Could I please just ask that it's not just given to the safer towns, that is available for all of Cornwall and for towns like the one that I represent, where we have issues, and I think all areas of Cornwall are going to have masses of issues with young people as we come out of lockdown. Supporting them, that is.
I don't know who's going to answer that one. Is it Eric? Oh, Simon's got his hand up.
Simon's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'll answer the second question first, if I can. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So just to reiterate the point that Erica made, the funds will be for which could be utilised for youth work will be through the PCC, and they will be putting in place a third-party administrator to undertake that. So it won't be coming through the Safer Cornwall Partnership to do that work. Of course, what we will be doing is ensuring that we promote and make sure that everybody is fully aware of that, and where possible provide help and support with different agencies, different town parish councils, etc., so that they are fully aware of how they can apply for that, noting your point about ensuring that we've got parity of offer.
Lovely jubbly, thank you.
Sounds good. Del Boy's back again. Jim, you've indicated, did you want to add something to it?
Yeah, so two, oh gosh. So two things. Firstly, the funding pots are many actually across other avenues. So you don't have to come through the PCC or so forth to get that money. There is potentially Proceeds of Crime Act funding that we can source. There's also other charities that we work with, as well as diversion liaison type groups that again we can link in with and signpost to. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that there was much more out there than just what we're talking about at the moment. The second bit, which was about the killed and serious injured, I think you make a very valid point. Actually, it is very easy to lose the enormity of those numbers of those that sadly get killed on our roads. It is still very much a priority for operational policing as well as for the Police and Crime Commissioner. I think in future reports we can, the data's clearly there, so we'll make that very clear to separate out the difference between the two, if that's not already done so already. So point well mouth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just come,
Erica? Yeah.
I was just going to come in on just on the end of there, Mike, just to say that if you, I'm quite happy to split out those two bits of information on the map. There's room to do that, so I can do that before it actually gets published. So that's not an issue. And the reason why there's not the partnership plan doesn't cover the kind of response to road casualties in depth is because of the Vision Zero partnership and that separate strategy. So we get regular reports from that into the partnership, and we also provide some oversight for local delivery of that, but it's not part of the partnership plan because it's a separate strategy. So just to provide a bit of reassurance there.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for all the answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. The next one with the question is Councillor Luke, please. Matt Luke.
Hello, morning. Most of my questions were answered already by Dominic and Cornelius, but there we are, put me to the post. Due to the surge in antisocial behaviour, domestic violence, etc., during the lockdown and possibility the continuation of lockdown, none of us really know what's happening in the next month or whatever. Have we got suitable funds to cover that and the outfall that will proceed from it? And secondly, being parochial on the St Austell issue, which was answered mainly, but I will say this, that there has been another spike in the St Austell area again lately within the last week or so. I know this because I spoke to the St Austell town clerk literally yesterday morning, and the majority of the problems that are happening, I shall say, are being imported from other towns in Cornwall into St Austell and from out of county. into the rehab centres and stuff we have in St Austell. Is there a way that we can influence this not to happen in the future? Because, you know, we're importing problems from elsewhere in the country into Cornwall. It's costing us a small fortune in services to deal with it. And in reality, we shouldn't be importing problems into Cornwall, you know, at this, you know, at all. I know the companies involved, it's all about the money. They get a lot of money to so-called look after these people and so forth. But, you know, it is getting to a point now in the St Austell area which we cannot physically take any more, you know, and it's coming to a breaking point, regardless of all the really good work that's going on in the background to help. It's, you know, it is an ongoing problem, and unless we do something about it now, it will continue. It is as simple as that. I know that's a statement rather than a question, but
Thanks, Matt.
there we are. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Erica.
I will just take that feedback back to Kim Hager regarding the sort of commissioning of services, because it's not my understanding actually that we have a lot of people who come from out of county, and my experience, and this is just my experience of having spoken to people that are involved in the St Austell response, because I'm not involved in it directly, is that a lot of the issues are local people or people who live in the sort of close vicinity who are requiring help and support in St Austell. But I will take that feedback back, because if that is that something that you have you been advised by somebody who's working sort of in that area? Or
well, if you go around and listen to all the accents of the people that are involved in those places, then the majority of them are not local. They, you know, and specifically lately, some of the problems we've had are, you know, they might have moved to Cornwall within recent times.
So if I may, I think if I may, sorry to cut you off.
I'm not
That's all right, no worries.
I think if I may say that the detail that I've received is not so much about the person, but there are some conversations that need to be had about the suitability of some of the premises. There are people in our county that need significant help and support because of their backgrounds, whether they've moved into the county, you know, recently, a number of years ago, or otherwise. But it equally applies to those that are, you know, from Cornwall and have grown up here, and the wider population, quite frankly. But there is a degree of thought process just around the numbers of premises within the St Austell area, and also the suitability of some of those. And I can reassure you that is very much on the thought processes of the Safer Town Partnership that's there.
Yeah, I know it's a very controversial, difficult issue, and I know we need to help these people and do all we can for them. That's not the you know, that's not goes without question. But you know, yeah, to have people coming from elsewhere in the country, specifically to the St Austell area, because those services are there.
So we don't think that's we don't think.
No,
that's,
we need to. They're going to find out about that, Matt. They don't.
Yeah,
they
okay. Well,
that
seems to be the problem that most people are insinuating with it, you know, and town clerk included, you know, as well. So
we'll get some more information on that, Matt. So Simon, you wanted to come in.
Very briefly, thank you very much, Chairman. And just on that point, I'll ensure that we've got the supported accommodation commissioning through housing and adult social care. I'll make sure that they're aware of that issue. In addition to that, and just to give assurance, there was a piece of work when Councillor Fairman asked the question before about some of our learning from the 6 weeks work that we did in St Austell. One of the things that is also being undertaken is a mapping of all of the provisions that we have across our duchy, so that we do have a oversight of where all of that provision is, so that we've got that evidence set and we can understand that, and in turn then we know where the needs are, and we also know what are the appropriate support requirements to sit and wrap around those things. So that work, just for assurance, Councillor Luke, is ongoing, but those specific concerns I'll take forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Matt. Next question is from Councillor Ian Thomas. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't. We didn't get the question answered about have we got the enough resources to cover the spike in domestic violence, antisocial behaviour, and so forth, and moving forward.
Yeah. Simon, did you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, throughout the COVID response, we've been very adaptive in the way in which we're looking at our service delivery and provision, and we'll continue to be looking at how we can modify and reflect that frontline service to meet the new needs.
Okay, thanks, Matt. The next question is from Councillor Ian Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, I won't apologise for my accent. But I will apologise for any generalisation I make and for setting my personal emotions aside. I just want to talk about rough sleepers, if I may, and about concern that I have, and I would hate to think that it's a worrying trend that's developing. Specifically, I'm talking about rough sleepers who are sleeping in the doorways of large vacant shops. Of late, some of those rough sleepers have been provided with tents to make their evenings, nights more comfortable. Unfortunately, again, it's a generalisation, quite often rough sleepers may abuse alcohol and drugs, and these are quite often some of the ingredients of fire, which in tents is particularly dangerous. Added to that, of course, the fire service in the past have carried out campaigns about leaving cardboard, rubbish and whatever else in doorways overnight. So I have a real concern that somebody, some organisation, not Cornwall Council, I hasten to add, are providing these poor souls with tents to make their evenings and nights more comfortable. And I also recognise that Cornwall Council is endeavouring to provide accommodation for these souls. So I turn it into a question by asking what the Safer Cornwall and the community partnership teams are doing to discourage that practice. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Simon, you wanted to answer that one?
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Thomas. And I would assure you that from a Cornwall Council perspective, we are not and do not issue any tents. We've confirmed that when that issue was raised with housing to ensure that that is the case. Clearly, we are looking to investigate on where that provision's coming from. And to why, so we can link in with them to look at how we can provide more suitable support. I am also aware that we have had some specific issues through the network area that have been identified, and the community link officer is working at the moment with those identified shops to look at ways in which we can get those secured. So I think some of that clearly is response-based activity, which isn't addressed in the long term. So we are continually working, as Erica mentioned earlier previously, with colleagues across housing and homelessness to look at how we can make sure we can address that and signpost as soon as possible. And we are currently investigating the issue around tents. So hopefully that does give you awareness that we have listened and we are acting on that at the moment.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, Ian, thank you. Cornelius, you want to come back again with another question? Cornelius Olivier.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in passing, I would say I thought Cornwall Council and Cornwall Housing and everybody involved made a really magnificent effort to get everybody under a roof, you know, during the pandemic who was sleeping rough. Yeah, you just have to acknowledge there is a certain small number of people who it's very, very hard to help, you know, very difficult to get through. But I do think the council really tried and did a good job, and certainly that showed up in my area. They were prepared to do anything really to make getting people under a roof work. But the question I had was going back to a point that was raised earlier by me about youth funding, potential seed funding for youth facilities, because there were a couple of references to a third party, you know, who was going to look after this, you know, allocate this money, which I found slightly worrying, just in case it was a third party I didn't like when they turned up. So do we know, when you say a third party, what could you elaborate a little, even if you can't give the identity at this stage? What sort of organisation are we talking about?
Yes, Erica, would you like to answer that one? Or are you able to?
The third party is somebody who is purely going to kind of administer the grants to enable the some of the PCC's time to be freed up rather than having to administer the individual grants. So the grants themselves will be issued on a panel. So the same people as you would normally expect to be looking at these sorts of bids and approving them will be involved. There'll be partnership representatives and PCC representatives on that panel. So the organisation, whose name escapes me for a moment, I'm afraid, will purely there in an administrative role.
Right, okay.
So hopefully that gives you a bit of reassurance. It's basically to help free up capacity in the PCC's office for some of the co-commissioning work that they're planning with CSPs.
Right, okay, thank you for that reassurance.
I just wanted to sort of also just add about housing, and I will feedback that comment to them about the appreciation for the absolutely massive effort to get everybody in earlier in the year, and the kind of ongoing provision, and a lot of that temporary provision is still available and will be available into the next financial year. The community safety partnerships working alongside housing have developed protocols for working with people with drug and alcohol dependency and housing them at rapid speed, and actually that we had national recognition for that. So it's a huge partnership effort to kind of get everybody in and maintain those benefits over the longer term.
Okay, thank you. Right, and now colleagues, I haven't got anybody else that's indicated, but this is our opportunity as a committee to formally focus on the content of the plan. That's the strategic content, rather than sort of our own what's happening in Mullion or what's happening in Penzance or whatever. So has anybody got anything else they would like to comment on now, or to ask questions of these three people that we've got here with us? We've also got four actually, because we've got Sarah as well. Has anybody got? Yes, Pauline, would you like to come in with a question, darling, please?
Yeah, it's on about these little grants that they're looking to put out in the communities. Now, with running the recycling shop and running the food bank and that, obviously I've had a little bit of a dealing with applying for grants. The one thing that I find really annoying is when they really want to sort of like knuckle down on the detail and when you can achieve this. And I mean, I feel that would be wrong to have those sort of questions in this grant, because it's very hard to say I'm going to do this by, because when you're dealing with all sorts of antisocial behaviour or whatever that you're trying to help with, it's a movable feast. So I'm asking that, when the application for the grant goes out, that it lets there be a little bit more flexibility. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Can I come back to you, Erica? Oh, Simon's put his hand up. Simon, could you help us on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Giles, and we acknowledge your observations, and of course we'll pass those back to the OPCC, so they're minded of those things, because clearly they'll be administering that one. With regard to the other areas, I know Mr. Pearce noted a number of other funds that are available, and we can ensure that you're cited on those. And I think absolutely, I note the point that you're making, and you make well, which, and particularly with COVID, is we need to make sure that funds can be as simply as possible gained and directed. So any comments, we'll make sure we pass those back on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it might be helpful. Sorry, thank you, Pauline. I think it might be helpful because Jim did mention other opportunities for small amounts of money. It might be helpful if those could be sent to Jo so that she can circulate it to all of us, so that we know where these pots of money are. Matt Luke, you wanted to come back. Matt, have you got a question, please?
You've just asked my question for me, actually, but I would just like to second Pauline's statement that a lot of the council grants and other grants out there make it all but impossible for you to apply to them, because they make the references and the conditions they impose on you are just not just too much for a small individual group.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica, you wanted to come back?
It was just really to reiterate what Simon has just said, and as soon as we've got the grant, the proposed process for applying for the grant, we will have a look at that through exactly the lens that you've just described, and provide some feedback. We were expecting, I'm sorry we can't give you more answers about what that's going to look like at this stage, but until the proposal has been confirmed at the next police and crime panel, we won't be getting any further information, but we will certainly do that on your behalf, and hopefully there will be that simplicity of application and flexibility that you're looking for.
Thanks, Erica, and thank you also for taking as an action to collate the different pots of money that are available. Pauline, you wanted to come back again?
Yeah, just to say, you know, I welcome what you've just said, because it puts a lot of pressure on the person filling out the paperwork. I know, because I'm usually the one that's doing it. And there comes a time when you're sort of like panic stricken, because you know that you've had to do it by said date. It may not be that it's achievable, and then I mean I don't sleep, because I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to achieve this before the date is up, because they're going to come looking. And that's not what this is about. You know, we're giving our time as free people, not as a councillor, to do these things, and I don't think that we should be putting pressure on anybody.
Thank you, sweetheart. Right, I haven't got anybody else that's indicated they want to make any comments. So could I sort of sum it up and sort of say, as far as I'm concerned, that the report is brilliant as always, as we've come to expect. It's very, very clear, very. Oh, Matt, you're sharing your screen, love. Can you take it? Can you stop sharing? It's Matt Luke, you're sharing your screen. You just need to press the little telephone box with an arrow in it. It's beside the leave meeting one at the top. Just press that again. Yeah, sorry. What I was trying to say was thank you very much, Erica. As always, it's a lovely, easy read report, but it's got all the information that we need. I always like diagrams. I think they're much easier to understand than lots of words. But obviously, you can see from colleagues how well received it's been. So we now move, colleagues, to the recommendation, which is on page 32. I think I haven't had anybody, or has anybody? Sorry, Matt, did you want to come back? Oh no, but your screen's there. Now moving to the recommendation on page 32. Has anybody got any amendments to that recommendation that you think of, or clarifications or difference to the wordings? If not, can I propose that the recommendation as is printed there, which is that the refresh of the Safer Cornwall Partnership Plan 2019 to 2022, as detailed in Appendix 1 of this report, be approved at the Safer Cornwall Strategic Board on behalf of the Council. Are you happy with that? Can I have somebody to propose that?
Happy to second. Happy to second.
Oh, thank you. I'll propose it if you like, and Pauline second. Thank you very much, Pauline. So can I hand over to Jo Heather, please, to take the vote on that one?
Thank you, Chairman. So the Chairman has proposed the motion, and Councillor Giles has seconded it, and it's as read out by the Chairman. So once again, I will call your names in order. Please you advise your name and whether you wish to vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain, and then I'll count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey.
So Martin Alvey for.
John Bastin.
John Bastin for.
Councillor Malcolm Brown, are you there at the moment? Oh. Councillor Nikki Chopak.
I think I need to abstain because unfortunately I took a fairly lengthy phone call through about 3/4 of that presentation. I apologise.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, 4.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles, 4.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley, 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, 4.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
Councillor Olivier is 4.
Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, 4.
Councillor John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Councillor Mike Thomas, 4.
And Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Towell, 4.
Thank you. So, Chairman, the motion has been carried with 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you, Joe, for doing that. We now move on to the next item on the agenda. And again, my apologies, we've come to it a little bit earlier than the officers were expecting us to. So can I just double check that everybody is here that needs to be here? I think it's Ellie and Alan and Julie. Are you all here?
We're all here then.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. Thank you, Sarah, for coming. Sarah Necker, it's good to have you. And Erica, thank you for your time. And Jim as well, of course. So if you need to go, that's fine. It's been great to have you here with us this morning. So we now move on to item 7 then, which is the Mobile and Micro Library Service Provision Review, phase 2 of the Library Transformation Programme. Edwina, as we know, has already sent her apologies. So Alan, I think, is going to do the introduction just to start that off, and then we'll hand over to the officers, to Julie and Ellie. I'm not sure which one of them will take us through that. So Alan, can I come to you first, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think, as you just mentioned, I think this report heralds the second part, or phase 2 of our library and information service transformation, and the proposals for the mobile and micro libraries, I think, are inextricably linked to our wider library and information offer at the static or office-based sites. So we shouldn't miss that point, I think. So this is a real opportunity to ensure we make sure we modernise and revitalise the whole of the library information service. There is some good news. The good news is that this part of the transformation is not driven by the need for savings. We made the savings that we needed to make as part of the devolution programme, so the phase 1. So I think that's helpful. But I think it's really important that we also seek to shape this service around the overall vision that we set for the library service. And what's at the heart of that vision, of course, was making sure we target our services to those who are in real need. I think in line with that principle, there's a real opportunity to develop the services with partners. And when we say partners, we mean internal services as well as external organisations, to make sure we can really join up some of those services to those most in need. And my final point before handing over to Julie is I think it's worth noting that how we shape the mobile and micro library offer will also be part of the solution for delivering our information services in the future as well, because they are, again, also pretty inextricably linked. So with that said, as a little intro, I'll hand over to Julie Sesamites, who's the head of the library service. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Julie, are you with us?
I am. Good morning, Chair.
Welcome, sweetheart.
Thank you. I will try and share my slides, so please tell me when you can see them.
Not yet.
Okay. Still loading. I've had terrible technical problems this morning.
Oh, bless you. Yeah.
No, it's still not coming up. Okay. One more try before I ask Ellie to do it.
Here we are. It's coming.
think it might be the wrong one, so apologies. Ellie, can you be ready?
Yes, also revitalisation review.
Yes.
I'll probably be interested in that one.
Ellie, can you put the slides up for me, please?
You'll probably need to stop sharing your screen first, I think.
Yeah. Wonders of technology. It's really slow, so I am trying to.
Yes, Ellie's got her screen up now.
Brilliant. Okay. Okay, I'll start talking. Thank you, Ellie. Just have to try and keep up with me, but slide one, that's great. Thank you. So thank you, Alan, for that introduction. And just to remind you that we've been talking about mobiles for some years now, and there was a rural services review that came to scrutiny in 2015, and that was all around budget cuts before our library transformation programme. And at that point, the decisions were made around savings and the current usage at that time of the mobile. So by usage, I mean people that hop on the buses and take stock. So we ended up at that point with a reduction of 6 to 2 vans and some new micro libraries developed as a solution. So as we keep saying, this is all about developing and modernising the service and transformation. And we're very keen to do this review in line with our 2020 library vision, which really needs updating now. And it's refocusing our resources to areas of deprivation and other needs. So other need, by that I mean potentially poor transport routes, loneliness, social isolation, that type of thing. As part of your pack, you will have received 3 case studies. They are focused on 3 areas of Cornwall, which is the North Cornwall area, the Clays and the Lizard. We particularly use these just as a starting point and as a pilot, because after looking at our data, usage, poor transport routes, etc., we decided they were key areas for us to start. It doesn't mean we're not going to do a county-wide approach to this. And it was really interesting as we started to engage with our partners early on in the review that they fully agreed with us, whether they were internal Cornwall Council partners or partners such as Citizens Advice. They all had those 3 areas as key areas to work on, which was we were quite confident we got that right. So Ellie, if you can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we are very keen to develop our offer, as I've said, and our core offer is very much around reading, improving literacy levels in Cornwall and digital access and support. And for those of you that haven't seen our new vans, please try and find one en route, or we can bring it to County Hall again to show you all. But they're fantastic pieces of kit. Flexible use with drop-down shelving that could be used as training sort of areas. They could be used for a multitude of reasons, and we're very keen to get 24/7 use out of these vans moving forward. So with that in mind, on top of our core offer, we want to enhance that offer and work with partners, as Alan's already touched on. And we've already got a number of partners well engaged, and interestingly, since pandemic, more and more of them want to be involved with us. And I think it's key to say that the majority of services, whether they're Cornwall Council or other partners, will be post-pandemic moving to online and digital support and use of the telephone. However, we all recognise, and that's whether that's Cornwall Council services or our key partners, that there will be a need for really good face-to-face interaction with residents, and particularly in the more rural areas of Cornwall. So we're all joined up with that approach. Okay, Ellie, if you want to just move on. Thank you. We're very keen to acknowledge the need for our library service, and I'm really passionate about that libraries are needed. And if you look at the social value of what we do, we know that they're playing a huge part, and the mobile libraries at the moment are the face of Cornwall Council out there in the smaller communities. They are the only thing that is going into these smaller villages, and the feedback we're getting currently is fantastic, that they're really valued, and the staff are making sure people are safe, and actually probably sometimes the only interaction people are getting with other people outside of the communities on a regular basis. So we know that actually for value for money, we're doing a really good job, and there's some evidence there. But I just wanted to touch on an actual case study, and we've changed the name, but this actually happened, and one of our mobile library assistants actually dealt with this person on a regular basis. So John lives in the Lizard area. He's 45 and unemployed and has got a small family. Poor transport routes into the nearest big town in Helston, and he didn't have a car. So he used the mobile library vans, not just for book stock for his family, but also to get online. So he at the time was on Home Choice looking for better housing and applying for jobs. and actually he has now found employment. But we also help to signpost him to debt and housing advice. So that is just one example of what we're actually doing out there currently. And we've had a number of scenarios where the staff have escalated safeguarding issues around the county as well. So they're already doing a lot, but we want to actually increase that more. And I think it's making these library mobile drivers more than a library assistant. It's actually, they are the face of Cornwall Council, and they can signpost and escalate and refer and support with digital and reading as well. So they're playing a key role out there, and we would like to develop that. Ellie, if you want to move on, please. This is just a slide that gives you an example of our targeted audience, and I think it's key to say, in line with our vision, that we don't want to put off our regular current users. They are vital to our service and they value it, but these are the types of people that we're really keen to actually engage with. And I think that's quite challenging, because some of the people that we really want to engage with don't naturally come into static libraries or onto our mobiles, and I think that's a challenging part of this review. And we need to be mindful that the success of the review might take a few years to realise. So I think that's really important to notice at this point. I won't read out the target audience case studies at this point. You can read that in your own time. So Ellie, if we could move on, please. Thank you. So currently we've got 155 stops, and they're on a monthly rota timetable. And I think it's fair to say that some of them are very, very successful, and some of them not so successful. And that's part of the review, actually working with those communities. Are they in the right place? Are they in the wrong stopping and the wrong sort of part of the town? Is it on the wrong day? Would they benefit if they met the criteria to a longer stop? And would they benefit to partners coming on board? I think the key risk to this, and I think it's really important to mention it, is that as part of this review, we might be bringing back recommendations in time that actually reduce an offer in an area where we're currently quite busy. So we might have a stop in an area of affluency where the people, I can see, I've been out on routes and I can see their cars on their driveways, but they love coming onto the van. It's convenient and it's part of their community services. But if we change that, reduce the offer in that area and started a new stop in a nearby area which matched our criteria around deprivation, people living in need and social isolation, it may take time for that stop to actually progress and get people on board. So that's the challenge we've got. And we know currently that many of the people that get onto our vans would be suitable to move on to our home library service offer. So we work very closely currently with the Royal Voluntary Society, and they deliver through their volunteers a doorstep delivery of books to people that are housebound or can't walk very far. So this is kind of wider than the mobiles. It's about looking at how we can support people in those communities better as well. Thanks, Ellie. And the micro libraries I've touched on already. They were a creation as part of the Rural Services Review. Interesting, quite expensive to deliver, I have to say. But some of them were put into pubs as part of the Pub as a Hub initiative. Those potentially are the least successful, I would say, out of the older micro libraries. It's really important to note that as part of our library transformation programme, we have created some new micro libraries, and we're very keen to change the branding of our new service once we've resolved all of this. But if we use Par as the example, a fantastic setup in Par as part of the running track setup, a real influencer set it off on the ground with us, and real community engagement and fantastic volunteers supporting more than a library service, cafe, sports facilities, and really touching on health and wellbeing for Par as a whole. So there's two types of micros at the moment, the ones that were part of the Rural Services Review and the few new ones that are part of our library transformation programme that will be called something else eventually. And I think it's I'm very keen to say that some of those micros currently aren't doing that well. They're not getting much footfall and much books borrowed, but there's real potential in those areas. So some of them are definitely in key areas of Cornwall that we want to work in, and we will then go out and talk to the local influencers and engage with those communities to look at the art of the possible. It's about creating a community hub with a library offer and digital support in that building. So there is a lot of opportunity out there. I think we are keen to explore with the micro host the art of the possible, but there is the potential we could come back and recommend that we close some of those facilities. So Ellie, on to the next one. So partnerships, I've talked about this already. Fantastic partners already: Citizens Advice, Age UK, Volunteer Cornwall, the Devon and Cornwall Police definitely want to be involved in our solution. And I think it's important to say, with partners, we need to have an evolving service. We're really mindful that people's objectives and strategies and fundings will change. So we need to be able to actually fit their needs into our rota and actually have be able to make changes at short notice to make sure we can accommodate them. We are mindful that some of them want to hop on to promote and just get out to communities. Others will want longer stops on down days of the mobile to actually work with us in bespoke sort of activities on a particular day. So it's going to be quite a diverse setup moving forward, but we're very keen to develop the partnerships. But I think sustainability is key here, and the funding channels will change and their needs will change. So we need to be able to adapt to those needs. So next slide, please, Ellie. So our options so far are to for both of those mobiles and micros, because it makes it more complex. We're talking about two different functions here. So we've made it as simple as we can. The option 1 is no change and to continue with the current service setup. Option 2, which is our officer recommendation, is to review and refine. So it's looking at new service and models of delivery, working on the current rota, working on the current route to actually support those areas of communities of deprivation, but without actually having a clean slate. So it's about looking at the current performance, working with those communities and looking at the performance to make change. The third option is the more radical approach, which is a clean slate completely and only targeting our services to those areas of deprivation, isolation, etc. So that's the more radical approach. The engagement and consultation timescales are that we will, once we've got a heads up and a recommendation agreed, we will then start doing some engagement. We know there are key areas in Cornwall we need to start consulting with quickly, and one that comes to mind is Padstow, where we haven't resolved a longer term solution to the library or furniture. It's a shame Councillor Buscombe's had to leave us, but we will be starting to do light touch engagement and consultation. But the plan is through the summer and through the autumn to actually get that full consultation and engagement resolved, and we will bring back a report later in the year with our recommendations. So Ellie, if you want to move on. That's the end of it. I forgot what the last slide was. So I just need to remind you all that, as Alan has said, that this piece of work is very much aligned to the information service review, and the thing we're trying to achieve with that is to create a single view of the customer for Cornwall. And that's not just Cornwall Council services, and that's not just the contact centre and the information service. It's about creating a team Cornwall with all of our partners, and we're part of a fantastic external partners group where we're all keen to actually work together, not replicate services in the area, know where we need to target support and what that support looks like. So this is part of a bigger review and a bigger piece of work that's going on around through Cornwall. So that's the presentation for me. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Yes, there are quite a few already building up. Thank you for that, which is good. The first one is from Ian Thomas. I'm not sure whether it's a question or just a comment, but if you go first, Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Julie and Ellie, for the presentation. You've probably covered much of my thoughts in what you've already said, but I did put in the text box that the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular the lockdowns associated with it, have created a situation where those affected by things like rurality, deprivation, or isolating, shielding, and I guess you can toss into that mix home learning and food poverty too. The needs are much greater than they were perhaps a year ago. So rather than just review the service, the micros and the mobiles, I wonder if there's any value in us considering extending it. But I guess you've answered much of that in your aspirations for partnership, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Did you want to come back on that, Julie?
Yes, thank you very much for those comments. And touching on home learning is an interesting one, and we're currently working with Together for Families on some projects to actually support children that are always working from home, and that's through our public libraries and the school library service. So thank you for those. But I think there's real opportunity to develop this service. You know, if we felt there was the need for more vans, we could come back with that request. So I think it's about the art of the possible. I think this review is the start of something really special, and I think it might take a few years to develop. So we might want to develop it over a period of time.
Thanks, Julie. The next question is from Matt Luke, please.
Oh, there we are. Sorry. Yes, just to say thank you very much for the service you have provided in the last year. It's been fantastic, and I speak for the Clays country that you know the vans have done a fantastic service and continue to do so. And it's not a question, but I would just give all my support to expanding this service, as you've implied, through the Clays and throughout the other rural places in Cornwall where it has proved to be so successful. So fantastic job, and yes, my back in to expand it in any way we can. In fact, great, lovely.
Thanks, Matt. That's very good, and well, I'm sure we all support that view because it is well received, isn't it? Martin Alvey next, please.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, Julie, thank you for tweaking the In My Area page on the council website, so it now includes micro libraries. Much appreciated. I know we discussed that in the past, and it's great that you've been able to do that. Question relating to the mobile libraries, and really this comes about striking me from something that we do locally in the village when the fish man cometh, and we've got a little WhatsApp group in the village now. So when the fish van is in the lay-by, he'll send out a WhatsApp message to the group to say that, you know, I'll be in clinic in 10 minutes. It occurs to me that a lot of people may have every good intention of using the mobile libraries, but forget it's coming on a particular day or miss it. I was wondering, is there already, or is there the potential for either a text message or some form of alert message to, for the vans to send out to a community sort of quarter of an hour before they're due to pull up, or perhaps when they leave their previous location, to say they're on the way to wherever, which will help the service users to be reminded that the van is coming. It might be done through WhatsApp. It might just be done through a simple text alert, because I think you have to have a smartphone for WhatsApp, but you don't have to have a smartphone, just a normal mobile phone for a basic text alert.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And we don't have WhatsApp groups, and I think the text messaging solution probably is the better one for our sort of our regular users. We do contact them when we're not going to turn up. The stop is set, and we do try to promote that. But Ellie, I don't know if you've got any other information you could share on the operational detail of that.
Yes, I do actually. We are considering that as an option, and ideally what we'd like to do, because we know the majority of our users don't have access to a smartphone or don't actually even have a mobile phone, that we can build a person in the local community that would you know, manage that and be able to communicate when we're coming to those older residents or those people that wouldn't have access to that communication.
Okay, thank you. That sounds a good idea, and I'm glad you're looking into it. That's great. The next question is from Cornelius Olivier, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm really sorry. I hope to participate in this review of micro libraries, but a combination of lockdown and my own ill health last year prevented me from doing so. Particularly the mobile library route for West Penwith at the time was like a collection of the most scenic parts of Cornwall. I mean, you could have a television program about it, Rick Stein's book tour or something like that, because all the places we were stopping were also lovely. Yeah, I'll take the proceeds of that. But in terms of on terms of targeting deprivation, because with the emphasis on rurality and getting out to places that don't have a lot of connections from public services in general, and Cornwall Council in particular, but you can get, you know, sort of isolation and deprivation on a community-wide basis within large urban parishes. So what I would like to see is a kind of micro library approach, and I'm using my parish as an example, within Penzance. So we've got a fantastic library in St John's Hall, retained by Cornwall Council, which is more and more of a rarity, obviously. So the thing I was thinking of is how it got out to a partner in other parts of the parish, an organisation in Newlyn, an organisation in Trenear, places that they, even though they're within the parish, are perhaps a little insular in the way people approach public services. So that's a kind of targeting deprivation, not just by going around the rural areas, but within the urban parishes. And actually, in the place I'm using it as an example, because we don't want to be parochial, it should be more straightforward to do, because we've actually got a library there, which is still ours.
Thanks, Cornelius. Julie, did you want to come back on that?
I think one of the things that I didn't touch on in my presentation was that as part of the scrutiny working group, we will be bringing back ideas, and we will have to look at the criteria for mobile stops and micros and get some agreement from members and make sure we're going the right way. So I'd be delighted, Councillor Olivier, if you're a part of that group and we can explore that in more detail.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, the next one, Neil Burton has indicated, but if you don't mind, Neil, I'll bring you in after I've gone through the committee members first, if I may. Joe, did you want to come in on something there? Joe Heather?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to clarify, just for the live stream and the public, Julie's reference to the scrutiny working group. I just wanted to make it clear that it's not a formally established working group. It is a working group that Councillor Hannaford, as the relevant cabinet member, has asked various members to be on. So it's nothing formal with this committee.
Okay.
Just for clarification purposes.
Thank you for that, because I wasn't aware of it, so that's good. Thank you. So the next question from a committee member is Dominic Fairman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Julie, for the paper. So I've given this a great deal of thought, and I've listened carefully to what the other members of the committee have said so far, and I wonder if the recommendations that we've got in the paper are quite bold enough. So we've got quite a bit of evidence around how the mobile has been A, cost effective, B, adds tremendous social value, and C, has been a real boon during the pandemic. So, and I think a lot of committee members are very supportive of the mobile service. And then we've got some evidence around the micro libraries being a patchier picture in their delivery. So I think I would be inclined to say that recommendation 1 would be that we review and refine the mobile library, but with recommendation 2, that we review and restructure the micro libraries. And then I want some sort of acknowledgement that overall we're not looking at these in silos, and that any cost saved or benefits can, so I'm thinking perhaps an extra recommendation that the overall reshaping of both is aimed at providing the widest delivery of the council and partners information services, which seems to be the direction that is adding the most social value, apart from books, which is obviously the core offer. So that's where I'm thinking, and I hope other members will give their opinions on that as we go forward.
Thanks, Dominic. It might be an idea if you've got time to type that up for us so that we can share the screen when we get to that stage of the debate, if that's okay. I've still got several more wanting to ask questions, so we'll go through those a minute first. So the next one is Nikki Chopak, please. Councillor Chopak.
Thank you, Chair. It was partly actually sort of Dominic sort of said exactly what I was going to say. Actually, we need to be more firm about what we're asking. And obviously I'm totally supportive of what the the service is offering at the moment. And I think it's probably, in how long I've been doing this now, it's the first time I've seen my little village of Tresmere mentioned in a presentation. So I'm all for supporting obviously the rurality of what you're trying to propose. It's just sort of more of an observation as well, that I remember before I was a Cornwall councillor, and obviously I'm talking about Bude, and I know we're not talking parochial, but I remember when the special constables in Bude used to hop on the mobile van and pop up to Morwenstow and places like that, which obviously, you know, and it was sort of like a forerunner, and it was like, oh no, we can't have those people on there because of safeguarding and all the other issues. So it's sort of gone full circle now. So I just wanted to say that I'm pleased that we're sort of embracing the whole partnership working, which I think has probably been lacking previously, and it's a great shame that that facility hasn't been used previously like that. So yeah, so I wanted to support what Dominic was saying, actually, so I'll second whatever he's going to write. Thank you.
Well, it's a bit risky because you don't know what he's going to put in there yet. I'll bring you in a moment. Thank you. Right, and Neil Burden next, please. Thank you for being with us, Neil. I know you're here from your Scrutiny Committee representative, yes. And so it's lovely to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there are two or three things. One, firstly, I didn't understand the recommendations, especially 1 and 2, but perhaps that'll be clarified as the meeting goes on. You know, I mean, the most important thing is that the library service is a statutory duty, and I think that we must never forget that. And, you know, it would be quite interesting to know what other areas actually achieve and deliver. But what my biggest concern is, when we did the customer access to council services, as you know, we found out that a lot of people, in actual fact, can't do it. And that's for a multitude of reasons, really. I think deprivation comes in many different models. You know, it may be disabilities, it may be intellect, it may be costs. And I mean, I've had several representations recently that, well, why is the library closed? I needed to do some printing. You see, a lot of people with these modern phones haven't got a printer. And if you, as you know, all the ones on the screen will know that printers are not cheap. And the ink is, well, another world, isn't it? You know, the cost of it. So there is a real issue. And I mean, and I think Councillor Buscombe was going to raise the issue. You know, when people fill out forms on their new mobile phone, they have no record of it. And they really desperately need to print. And it's a huge issue. And I think we've got like a digital famine. We've got around 20% of the population who aren't able to actually do something digitally. Now, that may be because they've got arthritis, it may be all sorts of things. And I think that must be always in the back of your mind, you know, and I don't think it's the deprived areas that, you know, deprivation in a rural area is total isolation. I mean, we've been trying to keep in contact with some of those people. We've got a lady, she's in her 80s, she's not been out of her house since last March, you know, so she can't even go to the library, if you understand me. And some of her neighbours have been extremely kind, but I guess there are some people out there, many people out there, who've not had a kind neighbour. And I think that I think COVID has actually brought that to the forefront in a way, because you know, I mean, the parish council is saying they're picking up a lot of people who are desperately lonely and depressed. So I think the library has a huge is a huge benefit to people, but I just think that we mustn't run it down to the minimum. I think that people need something, and it's not just the deprived areas, as it were. It's deprivation across the whole community, and that means people living on their own, people even with money. One thing I didn't quite like was that from the data engagement, you said, that's 2.12. I felt like you were selecting a few. Current users are retired, have digital access in their car. How much longer before I won't be able to, or my family won't let me drive a car? You know, all these things come to an end. Saw a man last night, he'd had his cataract operation. He cannot see. It didn't work. And you know, all those sorts of things. And I think we all don't matter how young you are, you will all get there one day. And I think that I'm not saying you should look after yourself in a sense, but I think we always must be very aware of not everybody is like our talented officers with all the gadgets. And I've had phone calls today saying the council website's not working and they're in the right state. So if you understand me, it's all over the place. But I'd like to know what the review will achieve and how, because I didn't understand the recommendations at all. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. I think that Dominic is trying to strengthen the recommendations that are printed anyway, so hopefully he'll capture what your concerns are. And the next one is John Fisher, please. Welcome, John. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you. I was very interested in the micro library. Are you following up on the people that indicated pre-pandemic that they were very interested in liaison with the Cornwall Council and the service about micro libraries? There's a place in my division, I won't mention names now, that was very keen even to have sort of computers put into their place. This is a place that's on a bus route, open more or less all the time, and they certainly had no follow-up after the initial contact. And I just wondered, after this review is completed, will you be able to make contact with those people who had expressed an interest?
Shall I come in, Chair?
Yes, please, if you would, Danny.
That's really helpful, and if you wouldn't mind contacting Ellie and reminding us of that community. But anyone that's contacted us over the last year or so, we've given them an update on where we currently are. Obviously, the pandemic slowed down our review somewhat, but we will make contact with them probably at the start of our review after these. We decide which recommendations we go with. Yeah. But we need to be mindful. We will have to look at criteria. We will have to look at the cost. So we'll need to be suitable buy-in from the local community to support it, but we'll definitely talk to them.
Yeah, well, that's very good, and I do apologise for not putting my camera on earlier. It's very disrespectful of me. Yeah, I will certainly send it over to Ellie. I'll make contact with them again because things may well have changed since pre-pandemic days. You know, things alter, of course. But if they are interested, I will then contact Ellie and give them all the details again. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, has anybody else got any questions they want to ask Julie or Ellie on what we've been talking about? Please. No? Right, well, can I take it on behalf of the committee to thank you very much for all the work that's gone into the report. There's a terrific amount of information you're gathering there, and really all power to your elbow, I think, is what's coming out. But Dominic, I'm hoping, are you able to share your screen with some suggestions? Brilliant, that's good. Would you like to read them out, my love, please?
Yeah, happy to read them out. So one, that the mobile library service be reviewed and refined, and the future service offers be based on current uses and the current service and needs data, introducing a new model of service to include partnership working. Two, that the micro library service be reviewed and restructured, and the future service offer be based on current uses and the current service and needs data, introducing a new model of service to include partnership working. Three, that the overall reshaping of both services reflects the commitment to providing the widest offer regarding the delivery of the council's and partners' information services. And four, that the next council administration receives a progress report regarding implementation of the new mobile library service and the new micro library service.
Thank you, sweetheart. And Nikki, are you happy to second that, as you indicated before?
Yes, I'm absolutely fine with that. That's excellent.
Is it strong enough for you? Did you want it a bit more stronger? Or are you okay?
No. I think if we get too strong, that might have economic implications, I feel.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Right, so we're now ready to sort of talk about this. Dominic Fairman is proposing that, and Nikki Chopak is seconding that. Is there any other amendments or tweaks from anybody, or otherwise I'm going to ask Joe to go to the vote on it? Anybody else want to talk about it beforehand? Can you put an X in the box? No, right, can I go to Joe then, please, to take the vote on this one, please, on the recommendations as set out and read out by Dominic Fairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I go to the vote, could I just ask Councillor Fairman, just with regard to recommendation 2, could you just give a little bit more rationale with regard to opting for that option, just for the record of the meeting?
You mean verbally?
Yes, please.
So the reason I put the word restructured in there is because in the report we've had evidence that some of the micro libraries perhaps don't represent value for money at the moment and aren't suitable for delivering wider services. And so I wanted to put in restructuring as a stronger indication that there might be some closures, but then also that some of that money could be then channeled towards the mobile library service, which is obviously having great social value in the area.
Okay, is that enough for you, Joe?
Joe's on mute.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was just typing that. That's lovely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just provides us with a fuller record for the
Yes.
record. Thank you.
Right, can I come to you now, Manus, to take the vote, please?
Yes, you can. So the recommendations were as previously read out by Councillor Fairman and as per his shared screen that you can see. So once again, I'll call your names in turn. Please can you say your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey, please.
Martin Alvey, 4.
Councillor John Baston.
John Baston, 4.
Councillor Malcolm Brown, are you there? No. Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Councillor Nikki Chopak, 4.
Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, 4.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles, 4.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley, 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, 4.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
Councillor Olivier, 4.
Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, 4.
Councillor John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas, 4.
And Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Towell, 4.
Thank you. So, Chairman, the vote has been carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dominic, for sharing your screen. That's really good, and for doing all the typing as well, actually, really helpful. Right, now, colleagues, we're quite a little way ahead of time that we were expecting to be at. Joe, can I ask your advice? Is it too early to break for lunch now and then to swap over the live stream? Because that would seem like an obvious place to break now.
Chairman, we can break for lunch. We can't actually change the live stream during the lunch break because we've advertised on the agenda and on the website that we'll be changing it over at 1:40.
Okay, so can we still do that? That'll be all right.
Yes, I can make sure that Ian, who's looking after the live stream, can change it at 1:40. But what we'll need to do is we will need to break for 5 minutes for him to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So what I propose then, colleagues, is that we break for lunch now for half an hour, and then come back again at just after 1 o'clock, then 1:05, and then we'll start off with the final report of the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service risk-based inspection programme. So look forward to seeing you all again at 1:05. Joe, have you got time to contact Mark and colleagues to let them know that we're running ahead of time?
Yes, Chairman, I'll do that for you.
Thank you very much. So enjoy your lunch, and can I thank Julie and Ellie very much for your time in the previous item. It's been good to see you again, and keep up the good work. And thank you, colleagues. If we mute our microphones and switch off our cameras, see you all back here again at 1:05. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, John. We're just on a lunch break at the moment. We'll be starting up again in 2 or 3 minutes' time. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's Carolyn Rule. Sorry, I'm the chairman. Should
Oh,
have said who it was.
good afternoon, Councillor Rule. How are you?
Nice to meet you, sweetheart. We're due to start again at 1:05.
Yes. Mark Hewitt phoned me up and let me know that there was the agenda had gone swiftly this morning, so that's not a problem.
Just having my cup of coffee.
Yes, yes.
So whereabouts are you based?
So I live in Kent, so obviously I'm working from Kent at the moment.
Yeah.
And when I'm not out inspecting fire and rescue services, I normally do work from home, but my office space is in London, just next to Victoria Station.
Oh, right. It's good to have you here with us this afternoon anyway. I hope you find it interesting.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah,
it's
we certainly
important.
did it. Yeah, it was a fascinating thing to be involved in. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Found out so much information. You know, it was really good.
Yes,
So,
I haven't seen all of the sessions, but I've watched kind of 2 or 3 of them that were on YouTube. And I think the topic, protection or fire safety, depending upon how you refer to it, I think it's one of those things that most people just take for granted. They see a fire extinguisher, they see an exit sign, it's there.
Yeah.
And it's not until that you have the tragic breakdown of that, which we saw in Grenfell, that it brings it uppermost into people's minds.
Yeah.
And naturally, it's right to look closely at the body that's responsible for doing that, for undertaking that in Cornwall.
So I'm just getting myself prepared here.
It's one of those things. People that work in I'm being told I should be muted and with my camera off.
Yeah. So we're just getting ready to start now.
Okay, right. That's fine. I shall do that.
You'll find it interesting, my love.
Thank you.
Right, colleagues, I make it 1:05, so I think we're ready to start again, to restart. So thank you everybody for putting your cameras off and your microphones on mute until you're coming in to request to speak. As before, if you want to speak, will you please put an X in the meeting chat box? That will be really helpful. So if we make a start, it's me doing the presentation on this one. That's a bit unusual, so I'm going to have a lot to say, I'm afraid. But I hope that you'll put up with that. This is the report back of the deep dive inquiry that we did, the final report of the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service risk-based inspection programme inquiry. So we're bringing that back to you today. Excuse me, it's you've all seen the report printed. Unfortunately, there was a slight problem in as much as we had the wrong footer, and none of us noticed until the last minute. So that has now been corrected. But the content of the report is all there for you. So if we make a start, that would be really good. As we are all aware from the inspections that have taken place, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, the National Fire Chiefs Council and also the Local Government Association, they're all keen for existing levels of member oversight and scrutiny of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service and the Chief Fire Officer to be built on. So that's the starting point. As the responsible overview and scrutiny committee, we have already added quarterly performance monitoring of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service as a standing item to our work programme, and in addition to our other standing items, the scrutiny of the annual assurance statement and the integrated risk management plan. We have also received many informal briefings on different topics to broaden our knowledge and understanding of the work of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, and this has enabled us to challenge further and increase our overview. In order to help satisfy the Inspectorate's recommendation for increased levels of member oversight in relation to protection, we agreed that our inquiry for 2021 would be in relation to Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service and its risk-based inspection programme. It was agreed by this committee to undertake the inquiry via a task and finish group on the committee's behalf, comprising of myself as inquiry chairman and councillors Martin Alvey, Dominic Fairman, Matt Luke and John Simmons, and I would like to thank them all for their hard work and dedication. At this point, I would also like to thank the many witnesses that either attended the inquiry to answer questions or provided written evidence that informed our evidence base for conclusions to be determined and recommendations to be made. I'd also like to thank our supporting officers, Joanne Heather from Democratic Services and Justin Sharp from Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. As a reminder, the objectives of the inquiry were agreed as: 1, to consider whether the current assessment of risk is an appropriate model for Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, and 2, to consider the future allocation of resource to deliver Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service's overarching protection role, including statutory and non-statutory activities and the primary authority role. The whole of the inquiry process was undertaken online via virtual meetings using Microsoft Teams. The inquiry consisted of an information and evidence gathering virtual observational site visit to Park House Flats in St Austell, and I would like to thank Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service and Ocean Housing for enabling this to take place, and also virtual witness evidence gathering inquiry sessions that were recorded, with the recordings being published on the Council's website for public access. These sessions were supported by initial briefing information and a virtual informal introduction and awareness raising session. As previously mentioned, from the evidence that was received from our witnesses, conclusions were determined and recommendations to the Cabinet agreed, with the recommendation to this committee itself also being agreed. From this, the final report of the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Risk-Based Inspection Programme Inquiry has been produced and can be found on page 159 of this agenda pack. For information, the full terms of reference is detailed in section 6 of the report, that's page 188 of the agenda pack, and the witnesses who provided invaluable evidence are detailed in section 7 of the report, page 195 of the agenda pack. The conclusions and recommendations, with the rationale for them and examples of evidence received to support them, are in section 5 of the report. So that's page 166 of the agenda. As per the accompanying committee report on page 150 of the agenda pack, the committee is asked today to formally approve the final report of the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Risk-Based Inspection Programme Inquiry, thereby recommending that the recommendations contained within it to Cabinet and agreeing the recommendations being made to the committee itself. Before I talk through each recommendation with you, excuse me, and give the other inquiry members the opportunity to comment on them and you to ask questions, I'd like to reiterate the comments that I made in the final report regarding Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service and the 3 recurring common themes that were raised by many of the witnesses. These were how well respected and valued Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service is by other council services and external partners. The work of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service in advising businesses is considered exemplary and is considered a key means of support as opposed to an opportunity to enforce. The benefits of joint working and how the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service brand of being a trusted blue light service opens the public's doors for other services when there is a uniformed officer working alongside them. Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service has a community presence akin to the police. Officers are welcomed into homes, enabling services to be the eyes and ears for each other. The benefit of the Council and Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service being part of it brings to businesses, through being a large unitary authority with regulators under the same umbrella, with the ability to share back office services and have access to services across Cornwall. So now on to the recommendations contained within the final report, which, as mentioned, are in section 5 of the report, page 166 of the agenda pack. Although it's not usual to have a preamble to recommendations, with regard to the recommendations being made to Cabinet, we agreed that in addition to the evidence that we had heard, there were 9 other contributing factors that were already established that supported the recommendations we were making. It was considered important that Cabinet was aware of those 9 factors when considering the inquirer's recommendations, hence why they have been included as a preamble. They are detailed on page 166 of the agenda pack. I think for me, one of the most significant factors is the impending new national legislation and guidance from the National Fire Chiefs Council following the Grenfell tragedy that is sure to change the face of protection, increase its profile, activities and of course workload, and therefore there is a need to be ready and prepared for it. Right, so moving on to the actual recommendations. Recommendation 1, you will see that the first recommendation to Cabinet on page 167 of the agenda pack is requesting an increase in resource for protection, 3 new officers. We didn't want to make the inquiry about merely asking for more resources, and from the other recommendations we've made, you will see that we've taken a lot of other things into consideration to help. We are also well aware of the budget implications that Cabinet will need to consider to agree and implement this recommendation, and we have not made the recommendation lightly or without careful consideration. But the evidence received was clear. The number 1 issue raised throughout the inquiry was the need for additional resource. We just don't see how the recommendations from various inspections, the new legislation, the need to increase the number of fire safety inspections, etc., can be achieved through innovation and existing staffing levels alone, hence the need to ask for more resource for protection. The purpose of this recommendation is so that other activities can be facilitated from an increase in resource. The subsections to the recommendation detail what the inquiry members hope can be achieved through an uplift and includes more fire safety audits, the expansion of the primary authority scheme and training opportunities for fire and rescue service staff, other council staff and external organisations so that they can be the eyes and ears for each other. It is hoped that from the expansion of the primary authority scheme, there will be a form of self-funding through the income received from the provision of services. Both Visit Cornwall and Cornwall Chamber of Commerce expressed interest in the primary authority scheme when providing evidence to our inquiry. It is worthy of note that the witnesses representing the 2 fire and rescue services that were asked to provide evidence have already invested in protection resource and have had significant uplifts in funding for it. There are some financial implications detailed in the committee report on page 157 of the agenda pack that Cabinet will need to consider further in relation to this recommendation. The committee would be making this recommendation to Cabinet based on the evidence that the inquiry received and the existing supporting factors. It is therefore for Cabinet to determine whether this recommendation is achievable from the financial information that will be provided in the committee report to Cabinet. I'd now like to ask my colleagues, that's Dominic, Martin, Matt and John, whether any of them have anything else to add to that first recommendation and the reasons behind it. So could you put an X in the box, any of you 4, if you would like to come in and add something? Give people a rest from listening to my voice. Dominic, did you want to? Yes, Dominic, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Chair, and you covered all the points I was writing down, so well done. But I just wanted to make other members who weren't on the committee aware that we were by far unique in this. The number of fire safety audits has been dropping nationally.
Yeah.
So there's been a national decline as budgets have tightened across all local authorities to a greater and lesser extent. Fire safety audits have been one of the casualties of that, and we're not unique in this. Well, where we are, more unique perhaps is in our balance between on-call and retained firefighters. So fire authorities that have you know, 100% whole-time staff obviously have greater capacity for doing this sort of stuff. So, but you know, the ones we did look at, Norfolk and Shropshire, like us, very rural areas with, you know, considerable percentages of on-call staff, you know, they've seen the need to put the money in. And I think that, you know, that the evidence backs it up.
Thank you, sweetheart. Matt, Luke, you said you want to add something.
Yeah, just to back you guys up as well. Because of the extraordinary amount of properties in Cornwall which deal with the holiday trade and so forth, and a lot more of this now being like Airbnb and so forth and whatever, which aren't registered at all, and you kind of moving forward, we hope to be inspecting, so bring them all up to standard. The need for officers in our area alone, because of the tourist industry, is particularly more important. We foresaw this will only get bigger in years to come. So, you know, and we are falling down on that, and it's for the safety of the people in Cornwall and our visitor population that comes in that this is very important.
Thanks, Matt. We do cover off that in one of the further recommendations later on in a minute. John Simmons, you wanted to come in. Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think Dominic and Matt has really put over of how we think, especially the retained and the on-call staff, and during the holiday season, it's just really bad. But also, can I know you strayed on it in your opening little remarks there, but can I really thank Ian, Councillor Ian
Thomas?
Yeah, Thomas, for standing aside, but I came on board and finished off this, and it's really nice of him. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, darling. Right, so now if I'll open it up to questions from any of the committee members, if you have any questions on that first recommendation, please. Has anybody got any questions? I've got people here that are able to answer them, cleverer than me. So if anybody's got any questions, just put an X in the box. I think the report was written quite clearly, so hopefully we will have covered off any concerns you had. But have we got anybody wanting to ask a question on that recommendation 1? Can you put an X in the box so that we know you want to speak? I think Ian, you just put your hand up. Ian Thomas, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One thing I'm not quite clear from the report, obviously there is a call, let's call it, for additional resources, but I'm not sure from the report whether that is because of increased activity, one would hope not, or a shortcoming in terms of performance, and I would hope not either. So I'm a little bit confused as to what the additional resources are required for. Thank you.
I think, as Dominic said, the nationally the number of audits and inspections that are being able to be done is dropping off, and we need to change that. But we've got Justin here, or Mark Hewitt. Justin, would you like to be able to answer that one for us, Justin, from the Fire Brigade? Justin, are you there?
Yes, hopefully you can see me.
Here, my love, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Thomas, and it's a little bit of both of those, if I'm honest, in terms of we have seen an increase in our requirement for statutory duties, so an increase in building regulations correspondence over the last few years and in licensing correspondence, and as Madam Chair alluded to earlier in the report, we do expect additional duties to come in as the full findings of Grenville Tower are released, and bodies such as the Health and Safety Executive lead on higher risk residential buildings, which will be a joint committee looking at the safety of those. In addition, if we compare ourselves, as you all know, the Fire and Rescue Service moved back to the Home Office a number of years ago now, and the Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Services was created, and we now see regular annual Home Office statistics, and if we compare our performance with with other fire and rescue services, the national average, for instance, is coming down, and we've heard about the reasons for that, with reduction of numbers and reduction of audits. But the national average of audits against your known risk in your database is around 3%. Now, currently, based on our figures of 23,000 in our database and our worst case scenario of 360 audits, 2018-19 and 420 the year after, we are improving the number of audits through succession planning, but we're just below 2%. So what we would like to do is get ourselves at least up to the national average, which would mean audits of 700, and the national average was only a few years ago 5%, which would be 1,100 audits a year. And I would remind colleagues that when the order came in within a couple of years, so around 2009, 2010, we were doing just under 1,300 audits a year in Cornwall.
Mm-hmm. I think that the big thing is it's not a criticism of it is resource that's the problem. It's and we need to try and find more resource for them, I think, really, Ian. Any other questions, please? No? Okay, I'll move on to recommendation 2 then, please, if you can put up with me. So recommendation 2, the second recommendation is about maximising current resources through innovative ways of working. Through the evidence received, you will see that on page 172 of the agenda pack, there are a number of recommended ways in how this can be accomplished, such as re-employing suitably qualified retired staff, the training and qualifying of tri-service safety officers, making temporary staff permanent, having dedicated protection management roles, and importantly, Cornwall Council staff and also members as the Fire Authority understanding the golden thread, sorry, turn over the page, between legislation, local and national incidents and Cornwall Fire and Rescue Services protection policies. Because I think all of us have a role to play here. All 123 councillors are members of the Fire Authority. Excuse me. The recommendation aims to maximise current resources so that they are being used in the very best possible way to support and complement the recommended increase in resource. From the examples of evidence received that are detailed in the report, you can see that a vast amount of evidence was received from witnesses advising how current staff resources could be maximised through innovation. A blend of Grey Book and Green Book staff is preferred, given that Green Book officers are able to have a full-time focus on protection as they do not have operational responsibilities. So once again, I'd now like to ask my colleagues that were on the committee if they have anything to add to that on recommendation 2. Excuse me. Dominic or Matt or Martin, has anybody got anything they want to add to that, or are you happy with that? Right. Oh, sorry.
I'll just say I think you put it perfectly, Chair.
Thank you, darling. Right, so I'll now open up to, oh, Nikki, that's lovely. I was going to say I'll open up to any questions. Nikki Chopak first, please.
Sorry, it's just a stupid question, and I might have missed it in the report. And obviously, that recommendation saying about re-employing suitably qualified retired staff. Do we have a number for that? And also, I know I've raised this before about how many prospective retirements we have, you know, and how, you know, so it was just about the numbers really. And obviously, I'm more than happy to take that detail after the recommendation, but it was a query around what the numbers are that you're talking about in the way of retired staff.
Right, I'll go to Justin to see if he's got that information. If not, we can always get it to you afterwards. But Justin, do you have that information to hand?
Yeah, thanks again, Madam Chair. I don't have that information to hand in terms of number of retirees. We do have a succession planning group, and we do have a retirement schedule, so we are very much aware of it, but I don't have that detail here. The point around re-employing suitably qualified fire safety officers was more of a national issue around there are some real disincentives to re-employ fire officers back within the fire authority or within a local authority, and it was more around working with government and local authorities to sort of release those disincentives in order that you know, relatively young qualified individuals could still work for the Fire and Rescue Authority.
Right. Thank you for that. Can I come back with a supplementary? Sorry, I've just spotted about the tri-service officers, and I'm very keen on that. Again, where obviously I am. Is there any? Obviously, you've mentioned about them being and being able to undertake further fire safety. Again, I apologise, but is there any anticipation of taking on more in Cornwall? You know, is there anything in the budget which will allow us to employ more of these officers? So again, I apologise if it's detail that I've missed.
Justin, or is that Mark? Better to.
I can go with the tri-service safety officers. I know we are currently recruiting again with our partners in police and ambulance. The exact numbers I'll allow the chief to clarify, but I believe we're looking for 13 officers across Cornwall. And in terms of the use of those officers, it actually comes from our very first tri-service safety officer, who requested through his line management additional fire safety knowledge, because he found himself in situations through his tri-service work where he could add value in those areas. And of course, we were keen to exploit that and develop that, and hence once they're through their training, which can be around 2 years, the natural progression is for them to undertake what we call a level 3 certificate and be a fire safety advisor. And you can imagine that if they're working within their residential care home, for instance, there will be certain levels of advice that they can give, or at least signpost to a specialist officer.
Thank you for that, Justin. Mark, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I've just put a note in the chat box just confirming that Justin is correct in terms of TSO recruitment is taking place. So being increased to 13, and the actual interview for that process is taking place this very week. So thank you.
Right, so it's very timely. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We've had a note put in the chat box that the live stream is going to have to be changed over at 1:35, so we need to stop it then and restart again after 5 minutes. So I'll try and get the next 2 questions in if I can. So Ian Thomas and then Pauline Giles. So Ian Thomas first.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was Councillor Fairman who mentioned the differential between whole time and on call, retained in my day, of course. I just wonder, when we're talking about additional resources such as fire safety inspections, why we don't use the on-call service more so, especially at these times, of course, with COVID, people not got a job, people on furlough, etc. It just strikes me that we've got highly qualified on-call officers who actually could carry out those duties. So you know, it's an additional resource, perhaps another option.
Thanks, Ian. I'll go back to Justin if I may. We did raise this in the inquiry, and I think the answer was about the standard of the training or something like the qualifications. But I'll come to Justin for the proper answer.
It's exactly that, Madam Chair. It's around the training required. Following Grenville, an existing document which we had adopted was refreshed, and that is the competency framework for fire safety inspectors, to make it easy. And it takes 3 years. It's recognised it takes 3 years to train a fire officer to the specialist role of a level 4 diploma, which is the standard we have within Cornwall for high risk premises. And that's the national standard through that framework. With that said, we have an ambitious plan to train our operational managers of our whole time in level 3 fire safety, so to be able to do those fire safety advisor role. And with our on-call and all of our firefighters, we would expect them to have a basic level of fire safety knowledge, what we call an operational fire safety visit, so that they are able to the most appropriate specialist officer if required. But the simple answer is it's around the investment that would be required to train them up, and then it's the maintenance of those skills with 25 hours of CPD required, and at least 8 to 16 hours a week. We would be employing them essentially 2 days a week. So there's a number of budgetary restraints around that.
Thank you. And Pauline Giles, you've indicated.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something because I might have missed it, but if we re-employ retired firemen, how does that affect their pension?
That is the difficulty. I think that was what Justin alluded to just now.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's not a firm recommendation. It's just a suggestion at the moment, and they're looking into it, I think. But I'll come to Justin to give a proper answer, if I may.
Yeah, as I said to the first answer, Madam Chair, there are restrictions in place which are a disincentive to the individual, and I believe there are also restrictions on the authorities for re-employing at certain ages, but I would need to get a little bit more clarification on that.
Yeah, Councillor Thomas. Ian Thomas, sorry.
Sorry, just to add in on that point as well, I think you'll find that an individual cannot earn by way of pension and additional employment what they actually earned in the first place. So I think it's quite restrictive what you can actually do with former employees.
Thank you. Right, it's now 13:32. I'm sorry, sorry, Mark, did you want to come in? Mark Hewitt?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. If I could just pick up on one of Councillor Thomas's points. So I'd like to thank him for sort of raising the question around the on-call and valuing the on-call. And I know it's a little bit off agenda, but I know Councillor Thomas alluded to current times furlough. But just to remind colleagues that at this time we've got 31 on-call firefighters supporting the ambulance staff at the moment. Also supporting household waste recycling, marshalling at that time when that was introduced, and possibly using our on-call colleagues as well in terms of supporting mass vaccination sites potentially in the future if that ask comes forward. So yeah, grateful for the recognition of the value, and just sort of linking it to Justin's response in terms of actually the fire safety element does take a considerable amount of time, training and competence to achieve. So if I could just add that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are very lucky with our on-call firefighters, aren't we? They're amazing work that they're doing, and across all the authorities, which is great. Thank you. Right, we're now 13:33. I think he's called Ian. I've forgotten his name. I do beg your pardon. The gentleman that's running the live stream needs to switch this one off and switch us to another one. So, Joe, can I have your advice? Do we stay on here? Or do we need to move, please?
Yes, Chairman. So everybody who's on this meeting needs to stay and do nothing apart from mute their microphones and turn off their cameras. The change the live stream link is for the public. So as we change it over, it'll be the public who are coming off one link and going on to another. Okay, so we just have to basically sit here and wait, and then Ian will advise us when he's done it. And thanks to Ian for sorting it out for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So colleagues, if we do that, I'm sorry it's a bit mucking around. This was supposed to have happened in the lunch break, but because we were ahead of time, it's thrown all the timings out. So we will just break now for hopefully 5 minutes or less, as soon as the young man has managed to sort the feed out. So I'm going to mute my microphone and switch my camera off just for 5 minutes.